members and come back with better news than to sit here and listen to the same things that we've been talking about year after year in terms of how desperate things are for our schools right now. Yes, we can continue the advocacy regarding charter school funding. We can continue. I think the chances of Chapter 70 formula in my lifetime ever changing is probably nil, but we will continue to advocate for that. But you know, this is where we are right now, so that we're in much, much better shape than we were when we sat down with our first numbers several weeks ago. So, Susan, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that at this point?
Just big sigh of relief. And it will be really nice to start the school year without having to think about freezing the budget right off the bat and being able to purchase some of the supplies and some of the materials that we haven't been able to purchase. So,
and the other piece is having the school projects done, and so she can devote 100% of her time to moving our schools forward. So I think we have good news for you this evening.
Great start, and I think that we want to use, you know, the next several months to begin to do some long-term planning so that we can begin to have a picture of where do we want the schools to be. What does that look like, and what will it take to get us there? And begin to slowly build back what we've lost over the last several years. And to really choose our priorities carefully, and for the leadership team to work with me to identify that. And I'm very, very optimistic that this is going to get us, to put us in a, position us well to begin to do that kind of work. And with 2 new schools opening, with the technology that's going into those schools, I mean, there's a lot to look forward to for next year.
The other piece, too, is that I'm very, very pleased and encouraged by our new city council as a team and their willingness to work with the school committee in ways that we haven't seen before. There was a really, I think, exemplary study that was recently put out by the Chester, the Commissioner of Department of Elementary and Secondary Education on the Mass Business Education Alliance, which did an overview of all schools in Massachusetts and how we can move up to the next level in terms of greatness. A lot of really good ideas in there. I sent it to the council, I sent it to school committee members, and several counselors have already reached back, and because I said I think we should do a meeting with the school committee, the city councilors, and the leadership team together as we talk about a morning retreat where we can begin, or a couple evenings, we can begin to talk about where we want to be in the next 3 to 5 years. What does that look like in terms of revenue, and how are we going to get there?
This is a public conversation. If you would like to make a comment, could you please raise your hand, state your name and your address, and
can I just, before we do that, let me just talk a
you
little
can
bit
do
about.
Whatever you want.
Okay. Just let me talk a little bit about the Kelly and the Brown School. We have a vote on the Kelly School tonight, just to correct that vote, because I think that's an important piece too. We're still looking regarding the legality, if you will, that we can actually earmark money from those 2 projects directly into the schools. If not, they probably will have to go into the general fund, and then we can set them up into special accounts for the schools. But we're working on those with the Department of Revenue in terms of how we can do that. We're at the point where the Kelly School is valued at 1.1, but it's assessed closer. The last assessment was done in 2008, closer to $650,000. I'm hoping that we can get a little more money for that because of what that will turn into in ultimately, I think, minimally 4 high-end condos on High Street next to the Bartlett Canal that will generate additional nice tax base for us. So again, I'd like to earmark that money towards the schools, but we might need to use some of that to fix up the first floor of the Brown for the youth services. The problem with the Kelly School, for many of you know this, but for those of you who don't, the school committee voted to close it as a school, but it has never been declared surplus. It needs to be transferred to the city council. The city council will then declare it surplus. The Historic Commission has put a preservation restriction on the facade, so that I think that's important to our community, so that we will always see the beautiful pillars and the brick facing the Bartlett Canal, so that that will be retained. We're hoping that some of the windows, whoever takes it over, can also retain it in terms of all of its beauty from many years gone by. The problem is that the building was never repointed in terms of the bricks, so there is water infiltration happening in the building, and then the underground tank failed. We had to spend about $5,000 to sort of jury-rig a new heating system with Inpro to get the youth services through the winter, but because there is no fire suppression and because it's not in full ADA compliance, we don't have an elevator, we can't use the second floor, so it's really not the best use of place for youth services anyway. So we're going to move youth services over to the Brown School. They'll take part of the first floor and the gym and the kitchen. So I think that will be a great space for them, but again, we have the same issues that we had at Knockwallen. There's asbestos under the flooring, we have some work to do. So the City Council voted for a $40,000 for a feasibility study, which then allows us to bring experts in who will identify possible uses, revenue sources, revenue streams. Is it housing? Is it live-in? Work studio kinds of spaces, something creative, is it something different than that? Is it market rate, is it affordable? So they'll come in and they'll look at all the systems, the windows, the building, the structure, and what will need to happen, and then at that point we will put out an RFP for a developer to come in and we'll lease it, all those decisions have to be made, but again, that will be another revenue stream that I hope to earmark directly towards the schools. So those are two things that we didn't have on the table before that could help us in the future. So just in case people had questions about where we were with those two school projects. So now if people would like to step up to the mic and offer comments and state your name and address, and we'll answer your questions.
I think you stunned everyone.
Well,
Yes.
I don't know if Dr. Bo,
Well, you're just projecting loud enough to say your name and...
My name is Graham Wright, I live at 129 Prospect. I wasn't at the meeting last week, so I hope it wasn't already covered, but you mentioned that, the great news that you've reached this 10.1% figure, and this is a budget increase over last year. Is that correct? Is that right? And then, but you said you went through these line-by-line items to find further cuts.
That was on the city budget.
Oh, okay. So it's
That's so I
reallocating.
could, yeah, so that
Sorry,
we can reduce on the, department head budgets, then we can transfer that money over. We only have so much revenue that comes in on an annual basis.
Right, okay, I just want
But
to clarify that.
that was
Thank you.
good question, thank you. Yes?
Molly Brennan, 1 Jackson Street. I think it's amazing, this is great news. Wonderful to hear the support coming from the city and for everybody. I guess my question is more, how do we not be in the same position a year from now? I think we talked last year about an aspirational budget. I think we've all sort of understood or come to understood, that there's a long history of cuts and underfunding and the long-term impact that has on our schools. How do we get out of this hole? What's the school committee's vision of how we move forward?
Well, I
It's
think
great
first-
for now, but what happens next?
I think that that's an excellent question, and one of the things that we've been talking about is that we've been carrying a 1.6 million structural deficit year after year after year, and just has been this little Band-Aid. So that by this infusion of money, we get up over that, and that becomes our base, and then we add whatever it is that we can glean from the budget as we normally do. Hopefully it will be back to 2.5% or 3%, maybe even upwards to 5%, but it's got to stay around that range as we go forward. And in the meantime, we just need to continue as a city to look for as many revenue streams as we can. And I think part of the reason that we've been able to even give the 3.5, and now it's upwards of 5% when we, I think, or more when we cover the deficit this year, is because we have implemented recommendations of the Revenue Task Force that happened under Mayor Moak. We've instituted paid parking that generates about $450,000, so that shifts money for downtown that we would have had to use out of the general fund. And so then we aggressively went after tax title. Most of you probably wouldn't believe this, but when I took office, there had been no mayor who's been willing to go after people who hadn't paid their property taxes. You would get a couple warnings that you hadn't paid, and then that was it. There's a whole process where we actually had to hire a firm who did tax title. That over the last 4 years has brought in close to $2 million and has put 127 properties back on the tax rolls. I don't know about you, but I feel that as a homeowner and someone who pays property taxes, that you live in this community, you should pay your property taxes. We have programs, we have abatements, we have work incentive programs for seniors. We'll do everything we can to help you with payment plans, but as a member of this community, you got to pay your taxes. So that was another place that we were able to bring in an infusion of funds and be able to then give more money to the schools. Again, it wasn't enough, but that helped. And then I think the other piece that we also implemented was the meals tax. And what that does is the city council voted that 50% of what we generate, which is about $450,000, of that money would go to sidewalks. But again, that's an extra $200,000 or so that we didn't have before. That all of that goes into the general fund and helps us balance the budget. It was a real challenge this year because we're getting less money. Our net this year is only $61,000 in local aid. Last year it was $260,000. And we're having to give an extra $204,000 right off the top to the charter school. It's tough. It's tough. But that's the reality of it is charter schools are a good option for parents, but we just have to keep pounding the pavement about that's not the way to fund them. So thank you for your question. Yes, sir.
I'm Bob, and a bit of the numbers first. Last week we talked about the need to support special ed. And
Excuse me one second, could you just state your name and address?
I'm Mark Belanger, 17 Mark Pond Lane.
Thank you.
And that it is the right thing to do to make sure we cover special ed. I dug into the numbers just because I was curious. It seemed to be the elephant in the room. And I know it's been the topic of many of the conversations that you've been having that I'm not privy to. So I apologize for the information I don't have. What I would suggest, looking at the numbers, they seem to be a little bit out of control. There's a 41% increase year over year for the last 3 years. And we're quite a bit over our peers in our special ed funding. So this isn't a criticism. This is the start of a further investigation. I'm wondering if you could do what I did last night on the internet and just start looking at peers. See how much those peers are spending on special ed as a percentage of their total. Because we could spend and spend and spend chasing the mandate, the unfunded mandate. But at some point we need to say, we have to stop at some point and let ourselves in. Right now I think we're quite a bit over a couple of peers I've found, which I would, there could be a lot of things that are out of control that are responsible for that. Or maybe they're doing it better than we are. And that might be worth some visits to those places. I say this not as a criticism or to have us cut into special ed. I don't want that. But I say this because it's 1/4 of the budget. Every time we raise it like we did this year, if there's an opportunity cost where we're not going to do language or we're not going to do some of the aspirational things we want to do, just because this is our Medicare and Social Security. It's going like this, and because it does that, we can't do our other stuff.
I would just like to tackle that for a minute. I think you're absolutely right. I appreciate the research you did, and I think part of what we're hoping is with our well, she's not so new anymore, Dr. Barbara D., who came with us with that expertise that we are starting to build programs, but we also had problems with the physical facilities that we were providing these services in. And so with the renovations of Knockmolin, with the brand new Bresnahan School, and with better facilities, I think that we will see some of the students who will want to come back to Newburyport, and that should help. But I'm sure you probably have more you want to add to that, Barbara.
No, I think that we covered the main pieces. What we have available in the district, and the fact that we're doing program development, really strengthen the services that we can provide. I do feel confident that we can.
Well, what happens is that a family comes to an IEP meeting and they're not happy with the programs that their child is receiving in the school system, and so they can appeal or request an out-of-district placement, and then they can even request schools that like Landmark or wherever that they think that their child would get better supports and services. The process unfolds through a very detailed and regulated process, and ultimately there's a decision that's made whether or not, sometimes it takes mediation, sometimes it goes to the Bureau of Special Ed to another level, and then the decisions are made and a student can end up in an out-of-school placement. Sometimes what happens also is when we have opened up in the past to school choice, and students come in, they come in blind. And you don't know that if you're getting a student who could have, pretty significant special ed needs, and you can't control that. So, but we don't have school choice this year, do we? No. So that will be one thing that could potentially help us. It hurts us in one way because we don't have that revenue stream, but we don't have to take the risk that we'll be bringing in additional special needs children that might be wanting to be served out of district. So we have 32 out-of-district placements right now, 31. Did we have one pending? No? Okay. So we have 31 out-of-school district placements right now, and we've talked about in 3 years, we'd like to get that number down by 30%.
Yes.
We also have had lots of conversations at the state level with the other mayors. I meet with once a month with Speaker DeLeo, with our Mike Costello, our state rep, with Katie Ives. Katie, our senator, is putting together a special ed regional task force made up of municipal and school leaders to try and get a better handle on what school districts are faced with in terms of this astronomical cost. Because everyone is feeling the brunt of more and more children who are coming into the district who are on the spectrum and need more services, not necessarily out of district, but they need more services than we have had in place previously and are creating, as Dr. D said, new programs for them.
Can I suggest as part of that, we discuss risk pooling? So that the
Discuss what? I'm sorry, Mark.
Risk pooling.
Risk pooling? Okay.
Therefore, so that there's not a competition to try that. So if a student comes in and they're on IEP or they're high needs and they cost more, that is shared among a community, like insurance. And if you happen to have more special ed population one year, you draw from the pool. If you have less, you pay to the pool. But it takes the fluctuations out and makes it so.
Well, the circuit breaker fund by the state, which is 4 times your normal costs, is supposed to cover just that. But they haven't fully funded it, the legislature, over the past year. Surprise, surprise. So we're hoping it will be funded 100%. We're now at 75. So, other comments, questions?
Anthony Lorenzano, 8 Osborne Road. So is it safe to say we won't be paying teachers with grants next year?
We never pay teachers. Oh, I'm sorry, I can't say that. We have, yes. I can't say that for sure. Susan, can you answer that? If there's any small grant programs?
How about turn to Angela, who handles the grants?
It's not safe to say that, just because we're still in a situation where we do need to use some of our grant money to pay teachers' salaries who are teaching the programs that the grants are addressed at. So I'm glad you brought this up because I did want to clarify that, because last week when we talked about this, it almost made it sound as if we weren't following what the regulations of the grants were by paying the teacher's salary. You know, the grants are enhancement grants, and they are intended to enhance programming. What we're doing is we're actually paying for the programming, the teaching staff to teach the program. And that is allowed in the grant, but it doesn't give you the flexibility of enhancing the program then, because you're using the money to pay the salary. So this year we will continue to do that. We will need to continue to do that. Perhaps in the future, we might be able to free up some of that money for enhancements.
What just worries me about that, and I understand you need to pay teachers with grants that focus on certain areas, that's what it's for. But when we hit a benchmark, like the 10 point whatever percent, and then we're still using certain amounts of grants for salary when we could be using them to enhance these programs, what it does is keep us at a certain level. And like we talked about last week, we don't want to be at a certain level because that's where it got us. We're in this position now because that's what we've been doing. So what we need is a plan for, like you said, a 5-year plan to get us in the right track. But my problem is, 5 years ago, were we saying the same thing? So when are we going to stop saying and start doing? I know this is part of it. We hit our benchmark right now. But at some point, there needs to be a clear, decisive change in the way we actually do things. Because if there's not, we never get to that next step. Much like you were saying last year, and I agreed with almost a lot of things you guys said last week. I'm sorry, but if we look at the past 7 years, what we're doing is we're trying to get back to where we were. We're focusing a lot of our energy on getting back to where we were. So what we need to do is, yes, we need to get back there. That's pretty clear, but we need to make sure we change the way we do things. Because if we don't, we're going to be standing still for the next 10 years. And I think it's pretty clear that for the past 6 or 7, we've been trying to fix this, and it hasn't gotten anywhere. Now things look like they're moving, they're starting to move in the right direction. But for it to take, it's going to end up being 10 to 12 years to get back to where we were. That's a long time. And that can be one child's almost whole education that the city is responsible for. So when you look at that, you're taking these children over these 10, 12, whatever it is, 15 years, and I know how it works, it's not always going to be the same. You're going to rise and you're going to fall, but with these 3 years here, 3 years here, 3 or 5 years to get back to here, it's just far too long. And I know things don't move fast, but that's why you have to think ahead. It took us 7 years to get to this point. It's far too long. And we can blame it on the state, and we can blame it on what we inherited along the way. But it's just far too long. Actions speak louder than words. Let's get it done. Let's get on the right path, and let's keep on the right path. So when my kids, which he's going into the new school in Bressingham next year, he can be getting the most he can from this city, from his school, from his education. And that's what it's about. I mean, that's what we're here to do. And the city has a responsibility, to some degree, to educate these kids and give these kids the best they can. And I just don't feel like over the past 7 years, they have. Now, I haven't been here for 7 years, but from what I hear, I think we owe them more. And I know we're getting to be on the right path, but that's it. We need to do it. Actions.
I think we agree with you.
And I know you guys are. I'm just saying it because it makes me feel better. I'd like to say, I was up a lot last week, but yeah, I just want to stress that it really needs to be happening. If I come here next year, I'm going to need to go on medication, and there's going to be the same thing. I can't believe what you guys go home with, but we need to do it. We need to get on the right track and stay on the right track. So we have to talk, but let's keep it up. Let's do it.
I didn't catch your name, sir.
Anthony Lorenzano, Lauranzano. Yep.
Ralph Orlando, 4 William Hall Drive, and I think we have to listen to that man. I'm sorry, I forgot your name already. I want to ask one question because I don't want to be out of order. So this is conversations with the mayor, or is this conversations with school committee? Oh. Okay, I'd like to take this opportunity to, whenever I come to the podium, to speak to school committee members specifically. So I've been here for 10 years. I'll take you back. I want to ask you all, sitting there as school committee members, are you satisfied with the process?
want us to sort of go down here answering.
The method in which we got to where we are, I mean, I'd be a fool to come up here and not be very appreciative for all that the city council, mayor, and elected officials have done. Plus, I might add to all of you, the citizens of Newburyport. They've contributed close to $50 million to these school building projects. So the city of Newburyport certainly is interested in funding education. But I've sat through 10 of these budgets. And I have a little bit of problem with the process. And I asked the school committee members as well, do you? Mr. Decanter, I believe, last time made a comment. Yeah, we're putting in 2.1, 2.3, what's the 10.1%? 2 point some odd million dollars into the school budget next year. That's a phenomenal amount of money. But what does it buy us? You can see down below what it buys. Now, I didn't itemize what these people are. I don't know what their needs are. And I can only look at it from my perspective. I sit on the high school council. Unless I have been given a lot of bunk over the last several weeks, and I saw Mr. Parent here, and he can correct me if I have been given a lot of bunk. And you heard him at one of the meetings. We haven't heard from any of these people. The high school, for example, if they don't add teachers and they've got 0.2 in social sciences, they run the risk of not having enough teachers to teach core classes, which perhaps may take them away from elective classes. I've been informed that in some of the science labs, which we had to fight real hard to get back into this district a few years ago, may have numbers of students in labs that are in violation of OSHA law. Now, I don't know whether that's true or not, but I asked the people who sit on the school committee, are you happy with the process? Because to get where that gentleman is talking about, we have to look at the process that gets us here to spend $2.3 million more in this budget that the city has been very gracious in giving. Are we putting back anything into it for what we're paying for it? And above and beyond this, not only the $2 million, there's $50 million of taxpayer dollars going into the construction of new buildings with some technology in them. So if this is a conversation, and I hope that it is, I would ask school committee members what they think of the process and how the process is going to get us to where this gentleman is talking about next year.
Mr. Decanter?
Thank you. Dr. O, thank you for your question. And I'm not happy with the process. Our process needs to be founded in thoughtful long-range planning, which we have not as yet done nearly to the extent that we need to. The situation that we find ourselves in year after year, I believe, is because we continue to try to do things in the same way. Are there differences? Do I feel that we have some differences coming on board now? Absolutely. I am very encouraged by the comment that the superintendent just made, that's saying, okay, one of the first things we need to do is put together a long-range plan to begin to build again. I am very grateful to the mayor, very grateful to the city councilors, for everybody to help put together the package that we seem to have gotten together. But let's not kid ourselves. That's a treading water budget. We're not moving significantly ahead with it. And we're going to continue to have these kinds of budgets until such time as we have a long-range planning process that involves both the city and the schools. Because we're in it together. We can't just say, oh, well, we'll go put together our plan for the schools, only to find out that the city has other plans for our tax money. And it might be very good plans. So it needs to be a joint planning process, a joint long-term planning process, and that's one of the major changes that I would advocate.
Mr. Menon?
I wasn't happy to answer that question. No, I'm not happy with the process. This is my 13th budget, and I've never been happy with the process itself. I prefer a more open process. A really significant change in this year's budget that I think coming out of this is very helpful is that we produced a budget that described what we needed and wasn't produced to match the amount of money that the city thought it could give us. We had the opportunity this time to say, we want strong schools, if we want to strengthen our schools, this is what we need. The process of how we got here is not rocket science. It's not a mystery. It's not something that you know, we should be shocked at. We've been having a conversation as a community for 8 years as our needs became more and more apparent, as the cuts couldn't be replaced. I'm glad that we filled this hole. I think 5% is really great. I can't wait to see it, but I don't think 5% buys us world languages back at the middle school. And that's really what it is. Over time, a lot of other communities have provided a level of support that was commensurate with what the schools needed to do. We simply haven't done that, and we need to be doing that. And if you go back through the minutes of the school committee meeting, go back and look at some of the video, you'll see every year around budget, we go through this little dance. We used to call it a value-added budget. Value-added, when you're calling a budget that restores foreign language in middle school a value-added budget, you're really beginning to torture language. You know, when your budget that you aspire to is to put a business curriculum back in the high school in this day and age, if that's what we're aspiring to, we're right. We've got to make some serious adjustments. We've got to make some very hard decisions. But you know, we didn't get here overnight. You know, we were all sort of complicit in this by passing budgets that didn't aspire, and by passing on budgets that didn't do the job. So, you know, there's some fundamental changes need to happen. This is a really good step. I'm sorry that it took making that $1.6 million structural deficit absolutely eminently clear to the point where the schools were looking at exhausting every penny they had in reserve, and that's not a lot of money, those reserves. So you know, I'm not happy about that. I'm very happy tonight that we've got a budget that, you know, the superintendent put on the table and said, this is a real budget. We can do some things with this budget. We can build some foundations that we can build on. But this is not the school system. It's not even close to what we offered when I started on the school committee, and it's been a very, very painful experience. Personally and as an elected official to watch us get to this point. Maybe tonight is when we do the pivot, and I think that's great.
Anthony Lorenzano again. So my thing is, so how do we change that process? It's a great conversation. Is it as simple as every single one of you guys writing your top 5 changes for next week's meeting and talking about it? Is it that simple, or is it? I know these things can get so complicated that it just takes so long, but how do we make these long decisions become short?
I think we need to have, I think you're right about coming up with ideas and then discussing them. We need a different process, and we're just even talking about it. You know, we need a process that involves the school committee, that involves the city council, that involves the leadership of the schools, to be involved in, as Nick was saying, long-range planning, so that we can really identify where we want to go and suss out what kind of sacrifices it's going to take, what kind of resources that we don't know about that may be available to the community. But we have to have a conversation as a community. I mean, I've often described my time on the school committee as a public conversation about our future, about who we are, who we want to be, and who we want our kids to be. And I think we really need to have those conversations. We need to be communicating, and I think that as we begin to do some of those, I'm encouraged that there's some talk tonight that we will be pulling that together. I think that you're going to see things, move more quickly. But that's one thing that I think is important.
Right. This is all philosophical. I mean, when it comes down to it, how do you make a town faster in their planning, or how do you make a town faster in the conversations about what direction they want to go in? And I don't know if there's an easy answer for that, but
I think you start the conversation. My guess is it's going to have
takes
some
a long. Likely, that's exactly where we start.
No, but I mean, I think momentum to really look at change. I hope so.
Well, why don't we create? I mean, if it costs a lot of money, forget it. But why don't we create some kind of another committee, I guess?
Well, everything is relative. We are where we are now because budgets that were proposed to keep us moving ahead with too much money. So at some point, you become penny wise and pound foolish. This is, we're not spending. This is an investment in the future of our civilization.
Right.
So let's talk about how we do this in a way that makes sense. I'm with you 100%.
Hey, any new revenue stream, 25% flat rate goes towards school from now on. 25%.
It doesn't work that way.
Why not? I can't.
Because there's rules, there's
What
laws,
rules?
there's part,
Let's make up some new rules. Who keeps us to these rules? Why don't we become that new idea? Let's find a way to get around it. In a legal way, of course. Let's just do it. Let's think of something. 25% off the top. Any new revenue stream that comes into this town, 25% goes to school. And if there's too much money at the end, you can put it back into the general pool. First comes to school. First comes to students. And then we'll be done with that. We won't even be thinking about this in 15 years. Let's change the rules. Let's do it. You can do it, man. It only can't be done if you believe it can't be done. There's got to be a way to do this.
There's lots of ways to do things, but you can't just make a blanket 25% of any new revenue stream because revenue streams come with attachments. So even if you get a federal grant that comes in that's designated for the jetties, I can't take 25% of that and give it to the schools.
Well, why can't you create something, create legislature for your town that get people on board, that makes any new revenue stream, a certain percentage of that, go towards schools. And if there's any left over after that, go towards something else.
Well, I understand, and I think your point is very well taken, and I think that's part of what has happened in terms of over the last 4 years, why it's been just like this little increment of, 3.5%, as we were able to introduce new revenue streams. One piece that I forgot to say, which I think was a really important piece of this, was our PEC group. This is our Public Employee Committee that is made up of all of our unions who have done an amazing job of understanding healthcare and being able to control our costs there, which were spiraling out of control, absolutely. And they have become such experts that even though our experience really isn't that good and we should be getting somewhere probably around a 16% increase, because of this great team of people, and Pat Levitt, who I'd like to recognize, is here, who represents the teachers union on the table at that, was able to push back so effectively with Maya that they got us down to 7.4% increase this year when they wanted to give us almost 10. So I have to, congratulations.
Karen McLeod, 70 Hall Lane. I might be wrong, but I don't think the principals are allowed to speak unless they're, so I'm not sure. Hold on. But I heard everyone thanked, but I would like to thank the principals, the leadership team, because not only are they trying to deal with this budget, but they're also in our schools with our children. So I do think we need to thank them. I've heard everyone else thank them.
I'm Kinsey Lumberton, of course, I also serve as a city councilor. And to Anthony's point, 8 Hawthorne, correct?
Yeah.
I'll be coming knocking on your door. If there's ever an effort to get behind things we have our chair of any future effort, you've got spirit and you're well spoken. So thank you for that. Relative to the ideas about future revenue streams, when a lot of times when these revenue streams are even mentioned, there's a lot of pushback. So I think we need to remember this moment and this time when future revenue streams are discussed, and then revisit them with this in this idea of the schools. And then what Mr. Menon mentioned regarding future conversation, I believe the mayor has an idea already about a conversation with the school committee and the city council, and I applaud that.
And leadership team. I
And
think
the
we all have
leadership
to be
team.
together.
I like that, and to speed the process up of what you spoke. Honestly, the most effective way I've found speeding the process up is for you all to show up. When you all show up, things move along much more quickly. So you can't get soft on that. And you need to pass that down the lane. Things get done when the people show up. So that's why.
Thanks, Megan. And I think also because, to sort of go back to your earlier point, is that leadership team would meet, the school committee meets, the city council meets, the subcommittee of the school committee meets, the subcommittee of the city council meets, then they bring their minutes back, so it's that kind of a process as opposed to bringing us all together to work on a 3 to 5 year plan. And this is something this is part of the reason why we hired Susan, because of the work that she did in Connecticut in this area, and believe, once we, got to a point where we could actually bring, the teams together to have this meeting, it's going to happen.
That's sort of exactly what I mean. Like, why not change slight things like that? It's easy to have everybody get together once a month, or everybody, or mandatory. I don't know if city councils always come to these. I'm sure they do, but make it mandatory for once. So everybody knows what's going on. So simple things like that make a huge difference. And changing little rules, how things have always been done here or there. I mean, that could make a huge increase, or take off a huge amount of time that we have. That, it doesn't seem like a lot, maybe on a monthly basis, but when it adds up over these years and you don't see you get as much done as you really should, then it's not a bad thing to change things up a little bit.
I would like to recognize the other 2 city councilors who are here, which I think.
Yeah, Councilor Herzog's here, Councilor Hartwig.
Ari Herzog at large.
Thank you, guys.
Bob Cronin, who's Ward 3, and Larry Junta, who is at large also. No, I'm sorry, 5. So I think it's really nice to have you here. I really appreciate the time that you've given to come and be part of the conversation tonight.
So I just want to, unless the school committee members have anything else to say. So one of the things I said this at the last meeting. I've been coming to these things for 10 years, and you don't see crowds like this. Granted, some of them are sort of almost here by requirement, but 10 years ago when I came to the first school committee meeting, the principal sat in the back row with me, and it's open to anyone. More importantly, to Mr. Menon, the process, I email all of you, it's ask a question. So 2 things I would suggest. The first is, how does this make us any better, a school district, to build upon for the future? You got to get the answer to that question. Because personally, I don't see it. And remember, you can bring all the committees and people you want together. You've got to get the community involved in a little bit bigger group than what we see here, and above and beyond those parents who have kids vested in the school. Because it's very difficult to ask the community to come up with 50 mil, then 2.3 mil, and ask them for 2.3 mil each and every year without an additional revenue source. It's very difficult, although some communities have done that. The next thing that I will tell you school committee members is what I've told you probably for the last 6 years. You got to start talking about the budget right after you pass this budget. For next year, or 16. What you want to put in, how are you going to get it there, what's it going to cost you, how much of a value is it to you. We hear foreign language, maybe that's a very valuable thing. There are other things that I think people would like to see here. Computer programming, a business class, or at the high school, engineering programs. Those are the kinds of things that districts that are aspiring communities to, that spend $16,000 per pupil per year, passed. You need to have those conversations immediately after you pass this budget for the following year and ask the questions time and time again, because one of the things that has to change is something he alluded to and you've alluded to. I've been coming to school committee meetings for 10 years. Some of us who do come, they're painful to sit there, okay, not have any dialogue and see very little dialogue going on between you. You have to change the method of conduct of your meetings and bring these more pertinent things to the forefront and discuss them in public so that people can hear you and the community can hear you, because I want you to tell me what the value is that you're trying to put back into our educational program. So change the way you have school committee meetings.
Right on. Right on. And that's perfect.
I missed Allison Harquist. She's here. Allison, are you here? Yes, I'm sorry. Ward 1 Councilor is here also. Thank you, Allison. Yes.
Hi, Lauren Rathbone, 42 Hawkins Lane, and I just wanted to second what Dr. Orlando had to say. I sat at the school committee meeting a month ago, and one of the things that struck with me the most was that some of the school committee members, when the budget was discussed, said that they were actually saddened or felt that somewhat responsible that we are at this point, and they kind of put their heads down and were talking about that, you know, they couldn't believe and they felt bad that we had gotten to this point. I had a problem with that when I went home, and after I read it again in the Daily News, I had a bigger problem. I think it's great that we're at 10.1%. That's what we've all wanted. That's what all the phone calls, the emails, the Facebook messages have been about. You got all these parents here who got excited. We got to 10.1%. However, as a parent, I still want foreign language. I still want other things for my kids who are only 5 and 7. Okay, I'm going to be here a while. And my issue is, I don't want a school committee that sits there and says they're saddened that over the past X amount of years, they allowed themselves in the school to get to this point. So to Dr. Orlando's point, I'm going to question the school committee every year when this comes up again and we need to get to another percentage so my kid still doesn't have foreign language. Yes, we save jobs and we balance the budget, which is great, but I want more. And I want the school committee to answer to the parents on how we can get more. Like Dr. Orlando said, I want to know, what do we have to do after this so next year this isn't an issue again? How can we add foreign language? And I want the parents to know what the process is at the school committee meetings to get to that point. And that's what I wanted to come and ask tonight, because that's what bothered me the most. I know it's a lot of work, and I'm so happy that we did balance it for now, but come next year, if it's not balanced and some more things aren't added, I'm going to ask the same question. And I'm going to, consider my vote big time when it comes to the school committee.
Thank you. Allison?
Allison Harkis, 2153rd Street. In response to you, I have a question for you. Would you support an override?
I absolutely would. I'll stand up to that. I had a conversation with another parent last week who came to me as someone who is good at rallying people and said, what can we do to get the city to fund more? I know it's not going to come from the state. I know it's not going to come from federal. We need something immediate. I don't want my kid to be in high school and we're just getting foreign language. A 4-year-old, a 5-year-old who gets foreign language in kindergarten and first grade is speaking that language by high school. And that's what I would like to see. And yes, I would support an override. And Megan Santos will attest to it because I had lunch with her and said, we need to do something. And we need, Dr. Orlando's been coming for 10 years. We need the parents with the younger kids to step up and take over. And that's what I hope to do.
I just want to make a comment. My daughter's 12.
Yeah.
And she probably won't see any of these changes, but I'm stepping up.
Thank you.
I think there's a lot of us.
Okay. Can I just, out of curiosity, a straw poll, just out of curiosity, I mean, if we are elected on the city side to be your voices, out of curiosity purely, if you would support an override, you stand.
Only if it goes to the school.
Yes.
Yes. It has to go to school.
I just want to point out to you, most of the communities that are paying $16,000 per pupil it's done with a plan in mind, like they talk about a strategic plan. It's done with a plan in mind, so that this particular override is done for the next 3 to 4 year school improvement plan. Okay, and you have to educate your community, and there is a value to your school that's been shown time and time again. Okay, there's value to having good schools. I question this, and I've been criticized here before in the past. I've been labeled a teacher basher by a previous superintendent. I have nothing bad to say about the teachers, but I put kids through this school. My junior in college did not get the same education in this district that my current daughter did, who's 16 years old. And it's not to any fault of the teachers. There's a lot of things that go into that, okay? But you gotta come here. Those people there need to ask the questions.
You need to have the conversations, but I think what's starting to happen right now is that at least people are learning what's going on. And I was ignorant to this as of 3 weeks ago. So, you know, one more person learns, you know, one more person finds out, and soon you have this whole hall filled. And that's exactly, maybe that's what needs to happen for us to have a bigger conversation, but it has to start now.
Rebecca Brodich, 26 Summer Place. I think what's key to that is creating this aspirational or inspirational budget that we've been talking about. You know, I think this increase is incredible, and I thank all of you for doing all the work to make it happen, but it's not inspirational in any way. And I think key to that is really coming up with a budget that we can get inspired by. And I think we have to start moving away from talking about what we lost. You know, we want to put back this, and we want to put back this. And instead we need to think about what do we need to do to become a town that people move to for the schools. And what are those kind of towns doing? And we should be doing benchmarking against those schools, and we should be creating this anew and not thinking about what we've lost. And we should be moving forward. But we need to come up with that plan, and I'll ask if you all can start working on that and creating that inspirational budget for us to get behind and push for and get an override to support.
Thank you, Rebecca. Graham?
Graham Wright, Montana Prospects again. Can we just, maybe just for my own sake, some specifics? Like, we talked about adding class back into curriculum, but what's the cost behind that? Like, how much does it cost to add a new class to a curriculum for a school? Obviously, there's staffing, costs, but is there infrastructure costs as well? Is there other considerations?
Depends on the class. You know, I think in terms of what you're
I'd like to hear the superintendent respond to that question.
I think it depends on the level that you're looking at. It depends on what supplies and materials are involved in it. Are the textbooks involved in it? Obviously, the staffing involved in it. That's why, when I said earlier, it takes long-term planning. Because we have, you're hearing my opinion, we have some holes that we have to fill already in our schools. I think we need to start there and then move out and beyond that.
Well,
so, for example, if you wanted to add, let's say, business back to the high school, we'd have to look at how does that fit into the current structure of the schedule, what types of classes do we want to add back in. Anytime you're looking to make a change, are you adding on top of, or are you doing away with something and replacing it? So there are a lot of decision points when you're talking about adding something, whether it's back or whether it's new to the curriculum. For example, one of the things that I would love to expand, I'll talk about the high school level, would be in the area of our STEM initiatives at the high school, and looking at some computer programming and looking at some classes in that area. You have to look at how that fits in with all the other electives that we're looking at. I've already had a conversation with Mr. Parent about looking at the scheduling process, trying to do it earlier next year so that we have very good data when we're sitting here in the throes of the budget about the numbers of classes we have, the number of sections we're going to need, are we going to need additional staff? So, every time you tweak something, it impacts other things as well. So, none of the decisions are ever simple because everything is related to everything else. But we still need to be looking at those things.
No, I understand, but I mean, we're talking about how things fit in scheduling, and that sounds more like logistics to me, and that, I don't see how scheduling really impacts the cost of it. So I'm saying, if you have to hire if you want to say add French to middle school, you have to hire a French teacher. So, and say you have 3 classes. I'm just looking for a ballpark number. I don't know if it's going to cost $100,000, $500,000, or what.
If I can tell you, you also have to have space. And currently, right now, there's not enough space to have foreign language at the middle school other than on a car. And this is especially disappointing because we've just gone through a renovation. Now, that's not to preclude someone doing something creative with a language lab, but right now there's no space. And to the gentleman, Mr. Lorenzano, some of his discussion earlier, 3 years ago, it was proposed that we were going to add a $129,000 foreign language program at the middle school. I took issue with the principal on that, and I asked him if this was realistic. The measure was dropped during the budget to close the gap. So it just struck me that when things like that come up for discussion, it's important for school committee people to be at the table to talk about those programs because those are priorities. And I think one of the things that people have mentioned here, short and long-term planning, but also the school committee defining what our priorities are for the school districts to approach in both of those timeframes.
Yeah, I'd like to follow up. I think, I think we do need specific numbers for all these things and for all our wants and our priorities. And how can we hope to attain these if we don't even have a sense of what the numbers are? I mean, because I've asked what the numbers are, and no one's told me the number other than $139,000, which at least puts in the ballpark for me.
Average teacher would be $50,000.
Does that include all healthcare benefits and everything like this as well?
Yeah, 55. To add those in. Then again, if it's a class that requires textbooks, those vary greatly. In terms of, some can be $39, some can be $109, depending upon what the subject is. Again, any other supplies and materials that would be needed, could be $500, could be $5,500, depending again on the subject. So it varies also from level to level. Obviously, in most cases, classes at the high school are more expensive, so you're getting into specialty areas. So usually they have unique supplies and materials that are related to them. Again, sometimes in some of the areas, you may only have teachers who are more middle of the road or higher up on the experience level. Oftentimes that's in foreign languages, if you're looking at those. So there's a lot of variables that go into it, but...
No, I understand. Okay, but I'm just saying, if we take it like a factor of 2, let's say about $100,000 for every teacher, textbooks. Space is obviously a concern. There's no space that's going to be, if you have to improve infrastructure, that's a lot more. So if we say maybe $200,000, that's 1% of a $20 million budget. So, the budget number I have here is $23 million. And you're saying it costs about 1% of that to add a new class. And we have a 10% budget increase with no new classes. So it seems to me, if we want to add classes, if we only need a 1% budget increase year over year, that is not such a ludicrous aspirational goal. This seems very, very doable to me. So why is it happening?
It's not just one class. It's that we don't have art that is consistent at Knockmolin. There are 20 kids there receive art 22 times per year, correct? So if we were to expand our current art so that we had full-time teachers there so that kids could experience art all year long. So those are the types of holes that I'm talking about that I believe need to be plugged. We need to look at what we're offering right now, plug some of those holes, and then work beyond that. We have talked about math intervention and providing additional support there. That's another area at the elementary level where we'd like to provide support in that area. So there are a number of other areas that I think across the entire school district that we need to look at. And and that's kind of building slowly but surely. And in some cases, we may want to say, we're going to replace something that we currently have with something new, or it may be an add-on. Again, it's part of that long-term planning process and where do we want to go.
Okay, just my last point. Thank you for your answer. But I think it'd be really helpful, I think, for the parents, and if we're talking about override, sorry, maybe I don't know the lingo, but if we're talking about overrides, I mean, you would need specific numbers, and I think it needs to go through and say, you know, if we want to add this, you know, filling all the goals that you're talking about, if we want to add a business class, you know, with, you know, these different classes at these different levels, the cost this. I mean, we need we need specific number line items, so, you know, there's accountability and clarity for the people that are putting their money into this. So I think that would be really helpful and process for you guys and also for us to help things move forward to what sounds like everyone wants, adding new classes.
For the last override, the numbers were broken out, literally, and, you know, if we get this money, this is, we're gonna put in X number of FTEs, X number of different classes. It was broken out. The conversation was about what this money actually buys.
And you can probably still find those videos on YouTube.
Okay. I'm not talking about the money we're getting this year. I'm talking about money we hope to have in the future. So I'm talking about setting goals for the future.
Right.
Yeah.
Audrey, did you, I think you've had your hand up for a long time, and I'm very sorry. Good to see you.
Well, a couple things. I just want to say, I agree with what you're saying about planning and discussion. But we sometimes run the risk of discussing and not actually making a bold move. That being said, I would love to hear from the community as to what their goals are, because I can tell you, when I go home tonight, before I get home tonight, there will be 20 emails of 20 people whose kids go to school here who don't want foreign language as their top priority. And so it's this constant, and it happened recently over busing. You know, someone spoke, wanted busing, sent me an email and went, oh my gosh, no way, we don't want to fund the extra buses. So I would love to hear, in the big picture, what the community's goals are. I have children in the school, I know what my personal goals are for the school, and I want what's best for our kids, and I want to implement programs that will never be cut again. They will grow, and they will grow, and they will grow, and I do believe that there is a figure that we can come up with on that. And then I just wanted to add, I thought, Steve, you had said something about something on a cart. I just wanted to clarify, are there any programs that are being conducted on a cart? I know in the past there's been art on a cart. Do we have, please, speak. Do we have carts?
I'll speak to foreign language. I'm Beth Rossi, I'm the principal of the middle school. Steve, I love your passion about wanting to do a program correctly, but I just want to clarify the truth about what's going on with foreign language. I arrived here about a year and a half, 2 years ago, and I was told very late in August, you're going to hire a foreign language teacher, and I gulped because I didn't know where in the schedule it would go, where in our space it would go, and what money would go into the program to help a young person come in and teach foreign language. It's not that simple. I had just come from a district where all of our students were fluent by the 8th grade because you need early acquisition of language, start it young, and I had pled my case momentarily. It didn't last long. I was hiring a foreign language teacher, so we hired a dynamo of a teacher. She came out of the high school, which was perfect because she could dovetail into that program. Yet when you have one foreign language teacher and you're asking them to teach 562 students per week, you can figure out the math. They don't get a lot of foreign language. I'm not willing to let it go. I think tonight is momentous in Newburyport. I love the passion for the people that want to change things. And foreign language will be part of the long-term plan, but we want to do it right. It is currently not on a cart, as you would think of a cart. It is on a $40,000 gift from the NEF that's called an iPad cart. So I want to clarify that because we appreciate it. I have a teacher that is, like I said, a dynamo. She's doing a flipped classroom. She has actually started foreign language with this budget, the old budget, with no money. And she's done a heck of a job. So we hope to grow it. Thanks.
The only, yeah, sure. I'm Tara Rossi, I'm the principal of the Moreland School, and what's
temporarily on a cart at Mullen is art on a cart. And the reason art is on a cart at Mullen is because we are under construction. Art in a cart? We're under construction, and next year we will have 2 new art classrooms. And to address the point about the art teachers that the superintendent brought up, we currently at Knockmollen, we share many of our Explore teachers. We share PE, music, art, etc. Right now we have 1.4 art teachers for about 900 students in the building. And we have 4th and 5th graders that can have art with Mrs. Baroda on one day and then art another day with Mr. Over. And it's a real challenge for those teachers and for the students. There's no consistency in the program. So we were fortunate enough with this 10.1% that we could add back in 0.3 art at Mullen, 0.3 art at Knock, for a total of having 2 full-time art teachers next year. We're trying to build back up the arts program at Knockmollen because it's had significant cuts over the years. So temporarily on a cart, but next year in a classroom.
Same story. We currently have art on a cart and music on a cart. And as you know, Bresnahan has been under some construction in the sense that we lost 4 classrooms last spring to prepare for the new building. In our new building, we will have 2 new art classrooms and 2 new music rooms. We currently share staff with the Brown School. As we become one, we will have a full-time art teacher, a full-time music teacher, plus a little additional FTE for both of those. We are also merging in terms of phys ed, and we have 2 phys ed teachers at Bres, and there is another one down at the Brown School, and we'll be merging some of those FTEs too. So there will be 3 phys ed teachers sharing, which amazes me. So we'll be in far better shape next year.
Go ahead.
This is Molly Brennan again. I appreciate what you said, Audrey. I think if you asked all of us here, we would have a wide range of priorities about things we care about. But I also think to what Rebecca Brody said earlier, we're looking to you to tell us, what does a best-in-class school system look like? What do we need to care about? What are the priorities? And how can we help this whole town, not just parents, get to that point? So I want to see, I think all of us want to see that aspirational piece. And, you know, I have 3 kids in the resident, and I care about foreign language, I care about everything for the next 12 years, but I want to know, why do people move to Lincoln? Why do people move to Weston? And, you know, what are we not doing that other best-in-class schools are?
Yeah, I just wanted to address some of the points around planning as a new member of the school committee. When you think about planning, there are 2 things you need to think about. One is short-term tactical planning, and the other is long-term strategic planning. And you know, it's been my view that we should focus right now on our short-term tactical need of voting and passing a budget within the next month. And I actually disagree with some comments that were made last week, because I think we need to put the discussion of aspirational planning off for about another month so we can get through this time frame and focus on what we need to do right now, which is make sure that we're funded for next school year. I don't think that the importance of what's happened over the last week can be overstated. We left the meeting on March 31st looking at a potential shortfall of about $1.2 million. And that was with a city appropriation of 5 to 5.5%, which is generous looking back over previous years. That shortfall of $1.2 million has been fully made up in the course of 1 week. And I think that's happened because we have a mayor that is focused on education. We have a city council that's focused on education. We have a school committee that's focused on education. We have educators and parents that are focused on the importance of education. And we have a public, I think, that understands the need and importance of education in Newburyport. So the short-term tactical need of making up that shortfall and getting to the 10.1%, which is the increase in the city appropriation that was needed, but getting to the budget that is a better budget for next year than this year has been taken care of, barring anything unforeseen over the next month. So now, now I think it makes sense to turn to long-range strategic planning. And one of the things I've noticed is that I've noticed through conversations with several people over the last months is that we do a lot of looking back. We look back 7 years ago. We look back at what we used to have. I mean, I really see this as a pivot point, and I think a lot of the questions that are being asked tonight reflect that. We're asking about how much, additional foreign language is going to cost, how much this is going to cost, what do we need to get there, what's that path look like? And I think we just need to make sure that we're doing this in a thoughtful way and that we are doing this as part of a thoughtful strategic planning process. And I mean, one of the thing that I'm most excited about as a school committee member is working with the superintendent, the rest of the committee, the mayor, the city council, and just as importantly, the public, in putting a long-range strategic plan together. And we absolutely need to do that. The points that Lauren's made, that Anthony's made, that you made, Molly, that several of you have made, you absolutely should hold us accountable. And I would just ask that you share ownership in terms of what that strategic plan looks like, because we should all be holding each other accountable. We're elected, so we're more accountable than anyone else. But we need to make sure that there's sufficient involvement from everyone in Newburyport, as many groups as possible in terms of putting that plan together. I know the superintendent is committed to public input in terms of what that strategic plan looks like. I certainly am. I wouldn't speak for other members, but I think that we're all interested in making sure that there's wide representation in terms of putting that plan together. And again, I think we need to hold each other accountable. It should be on the agenda going forward. We need to be talking about strategy. The budgeting process can't be a 1 to 2 month activity. It has to be a recurring annual activity. And we're at the point now, we've addressed the immediate concern. We can look forward, and we have to do that together. So I really look forward to working with everyone here on doing that.
We are at almost 7:30, and we were supposed to stop at 7. Let's continue for 10 more minutes. Is that all right with everyone? Let's take.
We don't have to start. The conversation has already started. Over the past 3 or 4 years, we've had several focus groups from the community pulled together with staff here in the schools to talk about some of these ideas. There were some ballpark numbers that came out of that. The recommendation, I seem to recall, that the group that was looking at returning foreign language came up with a ballpark figure at the middle school of about, to do it right, to do it in a way that's going to be meaningful. It's about, I seem to recall, it's about $250,000 per grade to bring in a selection of languages, to bring in the teachers who can do that. That's not to say that we have the classroom space, that's another problem. But we've already begun some of these conversations. We've begun conversations about technology. So the conversation, in a sense, we have that data, we have that information that can supplement what we're going to be talking about going forward.
Thank you.
Really quickly,
Megan.
there's an opportunity to have these conversations now. To piggyback on what you just mentioned, Mike, is anyone aware about the master plan going on for the city? There's an education component to it. So the initial one, there was tables set around the entire City Hall auditorium, and you went and you put your input in all different facets of the city. Education was led by Susan Vaccaro. So there already is an opportunity to partake in this conversation and make the community be I'm holding you accountable right now. to appear on Wednesday, April 9th at 6:30 p.m. in the City Hall Auditorium for the third community meeting for the Master Plan Update Project. And if y'all want to get right behind the education piece, there you are. So instead of reinventing wheels and more committee meetings, there's one already that's existing. So partake. Go on the city website. These things are constantly being posted. So
Thank you, Megan, I appreciate it. The master plan is what guides our city as a whole for the next 10 years. Education has never been part traditionally of a master plan. And it just isn't, because it's more bricks and mortar and, development. And I really worked with Susan and we talked about it, and we want education to be part of our master plan. So it is. So we could use some new committee members. If anyone's interested in joining, please send me an email.
8 o'clock.
So I think we have, yes, okay. Yeah, master planning education, we expect to see you there Wednesday night, and then sign up for our stuff. So let's take one more question, unless is there anyone else who hasn't spoken? Mary, can we let Mary?
Mentioning citywide, I'm curious what was cut to make up.
Mary, can you do your name and address for Mrs.
Mary
Kennedy so it's on?
15 Month Street. Just to get the citywide picture, I'm curious on the city side, what was cut to make up the 1.2 million?
Well, it's every department, we went through every single budget, we went through, we cut some of the public safety overtime. There was a wish on the part of one of the departments to add 4 new positions. Obviously, that didn't happen. So it was that, it would take me forever to sit down and go through the budget and go through line by line in terms of where we cut, because it was 20 here, it was 50 here, it was 75, it was, it went through every single department and cut that way, is how we did it, so.
I'll be very brief. I just want to go back to your point. I think a couple of things very quickly. Long-range strategic planning doesn't mean it takes a long time. You created a revenue sources through a committee a few years back. We had a model language program in place, so we know what the budget used to be. We can pull that from the past. This can be really rapid cycle. 2, we can decouple logistics from planning, which is your suggestion. The schedule's really tough. It needs a secret decoder ring to figure out. But we shouldn't constrain ourselves to it. We can be aspirational for the budget period and have a very involved community process for the logistics that follow. So we don't have to think about 15 or 16. We don't have to get way out of it. We can think about, we can think about 15. We don't need to wait a year to go through this. And third, change happens when you have engagement and a firm deadline. We got both right now, so this is a moment in time. I would challenge us as a group to push through. Would you say a month we have about to finish up the budget? There's a window open there, so a lot of people with a lot of energy and positive energy to help. So I would leverage that and we'll help it.
Peter McClure, 28 Federal Street. My question is, it's great that you found the money, but how worried should we be that through the budget process, when it comes down to the votes, that say, school committee hopefully will approve it, but then when it goes in front of the city council, do we need to move masses to the city council to make sure that the money's going to be there, or is that?
I can't really speak for the city council, but I can tell you that I see them really engaged in the budget process, expressing real concern about the schools, and I think that's where the budget will be presented to them as a whole. It will look just like this, which will have the capital plan in the back. It has the school budget in detail, and then all the city budget detail. And it will be delivered to them at their first meeting in May. I believe it's May 12th, and they have workshops just like we do here. And they will be doing education one night, and I would encourage all of you to come and to have conversations with the school committee, just like you've had here, about how important it is to retain that. The other piece, which was really good news, is that we're always sort of holding our breath on what our assessment for Whittier would be this year. $1,200 increase. It's been thousands. you know, one year it was over $100,000 increase, so a $1,200 increase also helped us a lot this year, because we had planned for a higher increase in the Whittier assessment, so.
5 kids were exempt.
And 5 kids were exempt.
If I can say, what I can say about the process is that in the 13 budgets I've seen, I can't recall a single dime taken out of the education budget. The process is that, you know, we produce a budget, we send it to the mayor then processes that budget. She can add, she can take away, or she can do what she wants. It goes to the city council. I cannot recall a single time when the city council took anything out of the education budget.
Let's start our school committee.
Thank you. Thank you. Really appreciate your time. Hi, Julia. How are you? We're running a little late this morning. This morning?
Very late this morning.
Oh, yeah. You know, it's all the rules. All
right, let's call the order here.
All right, let's call to order the meeting of the school committee for the Newburyport Public Schools for Monday, April 7th, 2014. Mrs. Kennedy, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Cole.
Here.
Mr. Takanta.
Here.
Mayor Holliday.
Present.
Mr. Lucan.
Here.
Ms. McCarthy.
She's here.
She's here. Mr. Bennett.
Present.
Miss Sweeney.
Present.
Will you please stand for the pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do we have any warrants this evening, Mr.
Yeah, we do indeed. I move that the following named bills of the Newburyport Public Schools amounting in the aggregate to $35,047.65 be approved and forwarded to the city auditor for payment. There are no conflicts on this one.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I move that the following named bills of the Newburyport Public Schools amounting in the aggregate of $296,971.37 be approved and forwarded to the city auditor for payment. There is a conflict with the mayor.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Present? Motion carries.
And, great.
That's
Done.
it. Members, I'd like you to turn your attention to the school committee minutes for Monday, March 17th. Could I hear a motion, please?
I move the approval of the minutes of Monday, March 17th, sorry.
Patty's Day.
Second.
Discussion, comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Present? Motion carries. Thank you. Julia Bradley, way down there on the end, our high school rep, welcome. Tell us some news.
So the student council fundraiser called Penny Wars last week during the Spirit Week raised exactly
Julia, I'm sorry, we can't hear you over here. You have to speak up.
So the student council fundraiser last week during the Spirit Week raised $687.37, which all went to the senior class. This is the competition. The National Honor Society induction ceremony was on April 3rd. The Credit for Life Fair is tomorrow at Triton High School, and the majority of junior students will attend. Junior prom is Saturday. Prom night is at 5:30 at Atkinson. The Provident Bank Art Show is currently on display and will be throughout the month of April, and then the NHS Celebration of Academic Excellence is on the 16th. And that's it right now.
Thank you. Thank you. Homework? Yes, you waited so long. This brings us to our session of public comment for this evening. I would like to actually begin it with a letter that was sent to the school committee this past week. Person couldn't be available for our budget discussion. we would like this letter entered into the minutes. Mrs. Kennedy, I have a copy for you as well. This is from Lisa Mead. It says, "Dear Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the school committee, I am unable to attend tonight's hearing as I have a work commitment in another community. However, I wanted to continue to participate in this important discussion. As I mentioned last week, the current lack of funding has not been caused by any of the current city leadership, nor was it caused by the city leadership of the past several decades. To the contrary, the city's unfortunate situation regarding school funding is due to a series of events that began in 1984 with the passage of Proposition 2.5, which locked in a comparatively low tax rate, which in turn affected all future tax rates, followed by the adoption of the ed reform in early 1990s, and the federal government's continued failure to fund special education despite their increased mandates, followed by the introduction of publicly funded charter schools, which is supported entirely at the community level through the local school, public school budget. In turn, our schools have suffered cut after cut for more than 2 decades, where once the system thrived as a model education system for the Commonwealth, it now barely offers some of the most basic opportunities for our students. Newburyport has always prided itself on its public schools. Indeed, the major impetus for splitting off from Newbury more than 250 years ago was due to Newbury's reluctance to fund public education. Today is no different. The city is at a point where it can no longer wait for another entity to fund our public schools properly. The federal government may not ever fund special education despite nationwide lobbying. It certainly won't fund special education in time to save Newburyport's public schools. Similarly, communities across Massachusetts have lobbied for more equitable funding of charter schools since the first one opened, and we've yet to see the state make changes. If they are on the horizon at all, these changes certainly won't be made in time to save Newburyport's public schools. Neither will the Commonwealth, despite lobbying for municipalities to add additional money for special education in time to save Newburyport's public schools. We can no longer wait for others to adequately fund our public schools. We must act ourselves to protect our children with the learning opportunities which will allow them to compete and succeed in higher education or in workforce opportunities after high school. I am in a unique position to understand the balancing act in which the mayor and the school committee and the city council must engage. Our elected officials, especially the mayor, is in the untenable position of trying to be sure general government services are maintained while providing enough money for the schools to stay afloat. After 20 years of being at the short end of revenue formulas and realities, the scales are tipped fairly against her, just as they are tipped against our children. But in the current scenario, we cannot rely on the Commonwealth to balance these scales and underwrite both the general government budget and an adequate school system budget. I personally believe that the Newburyport school budget does not meet its obligations to students, that it hasn't for several years, and that the time has come to stop shortchanging the children of our community. We have waited long enough for formulas to change, long enough for fair treatment by the Commonwealth, and long enough for the federal government to reduce its mandates on all communities. Outside change is not coming in time. Despite our best efforts and the best efforts of our representatives, I believe, as many Newburyporters do, that adequately funding public education is one of the critical cornerstones of a healthy community. I believe the school committee must champion public education and help Newburyport recommit itself to providing a fair and proper education to all of its students. Many residents are looking for this leadership, and I, like myself, pledge their support and assistance. Respectfully, Lisa Mead. Thank you. Is there any other public comment at this time? Yes.
Ralph Orlando, 4 William Hall Drive, and again, I speak to the school committee members at this portion of the meeting. So I want to make a very strong pitch for you to recollect back in 2006 when we had the $1.2 million deficit here in the high school, lost 7.6 to 7.8 FTE supported teachers. They've never been replaced. I've been coming for a while. There's been some questions about the process in the past and in the current state of how we arrive at our budget. There have been some concerns here to me in that this year's presentation, at least still pending, it has not been as clearly transparent as it has been previously. I see what the staff increases are. I verbalized before, I'm not sure how that provides a foundation for our educational system, but I'm going to ask each and every one of you not to approve this budget until you really vet what's going on at the high school. The school council really took its charge this year following its charter. There have been 2 teachers who diligently attend, 2 parents missed a parent, along with 1 student. We have really vetted the budget there. There is potentially a significant deficit in teachers at the high school, especially for teaching core curriculum. That may lead to, if they have to move up, a loss of electives. There's issues in the science lab. So I don't know what the next process will be here, but I ask you to strongly look at the high school and make sure that you have enough teachers there to provide the students at the high school with the education that they need before you pass this budget.
Thank you. Any other comment? Hearing none, we're going to move on to the next item on our agenda, and I'm going to ask the mayor to introduce this. This is the corrected motion for the vote of the Kelly School. You did vote back in '07, April 23rd, to close the Kelly School as a school facility. But now we need to declare it surplus in order for the city council to take that vote and be able to declare it surplus, and we can put that up for sale. So the motion is that the school committee of the city of Newburyport hereby designate the former Kelly School, formally closed by the school committee by vote of April 23rd, 2007, and now operating as a Newburyport Youth Services facility as surplus property, no longer required by the school department, and transfer said building and land upon which it stands, 151 High Street, Assessors Map 35, Lot 161, from the school department to the mayor and city council for care, custody, and/or further disposition as they may deem appropriate. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Motion carries unanimously. A new topic, FY15 budget. I'm going to turn this over to the superintendent.
I just wanted to have an opportunity tonight to have the principals briefly present their budgets, what's new, if there's anything new in their budget, and I'm going to start with the president. So I would ask Christina, would you come up? You're going to have to be loud.
Yes.
Okay, that's maybe a little problematic. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
So far.
Okay. Amy's going to start with some information regarding accomplishments this year, and then I will follow, and then we'll speak briefly about where we are hoping to go next year.
So just to begin with some of the accomplishments for the Bresnahan School, and we're speaking for this past year, both to the Brown Pre-KK and the Bresnahan 1-3. We wanted to recognize all that the NEF has done, particularly donating significantly to technology at both schools this year. At the preschool and kindergarten level, all teachers received replacement high-powered desktop computers, which are going to be repurposed to the high school next year for, I believe, their CAD design program. We also were able to get an iPad cart for the kindergarten level with 30 iPads on it and 60 laptops, which constitute 2 carts for grades 1-3, which helped with the new online computer-based park assessment that we just entered into the first round of last week. Correct.
Yes, but not at.
Not at the Bressingham, right, sorry. Okay. So kindergarten teachers this year have been working on a writing rubric and common assessment for all students. They have participated in professional development that has focused on enhancing their writing instruction. We've also been working with a consultant across the elementary grades under the philosophy of talking to writing and developing a systematic structure for writing across grade levels. This year we were able to bring a BCBA on, split between the Brown and the Bressingham, which has helped to support some of the new special education programs that we have at both schools. The Bressingham teachers participated in professional development around implementing and evaluating their new language-based program, therapeutic program, and program for students with severe and intense needs. So those are our major accomplishments for this past school year, which will be a good segue to see where we're going in the next year's budget.
Some additional accomplishments include the development of an IDC center, which is for children with significant special needs. We have an IDC center at both the Brown and Bressingham schools. We were also able to implement IXL, which is another computer-based program to support math intervention. We were using another program in the past, but found that IXL is helping our children move further along. We continue with Lexia as well across all grade levels. This year, I'm excited that our after-school program not only supported literacy needs, but also mathematics instruction. And that is a jump for us. We have found it very challenging to embed math support, whether it's during the school day or before or after school, because we don't have the same level of intervention support currently. So this was a huge, huge success in the sense that we were able to kick it off. I'm excited because that then also connects to our goal of bringing on a math interventionist next year. This is a position that we have put into our budget year after year over these past few years, and it has not made it thus far. However, this year, the coordinators and Angela Vick also supported the need for an interventionist at our level. So we were very, very excited. And I think I lost track of one more accomplishment, and that is that we developed a joint Brown-Bressingham School Council so that we would have the opportunity to work as one this year as we prepare for the next school year when we are a pre-K through 3 Bressingham school. We've been focusing on the development of the budget, transition planning. We've been talking about student achievement and programming, etc. So this was an exciting year and continues to be an exciting year at the council level.
So just to talk about next year, moving forward with the FY15 budget, some of our goals and objectives that are included in this budget are the continued alignment, vertical alignment of our curriculum to the Common Core. This year we were able to launch new standards-based report cards, which are still in draft form, and we're going to be continuing to revise those. We were able to analyze data and look at our curricular and instructional gaps, and with the help of Angela Vick and Emily Russin, we have been working with a writing committee to focus on phonics instruction, identifying phonics instruction at the primary level, and we'll be working on implementing a phonics program next year for kindergarten and grade 1. And then really one of the biggest tasks that we have in terms of coming together in the new school is developing systems, procedures, and protocols as we are looking to provide continuity to the staff and students, pre-K to 3, almost 800 students, into one building under a new leadership model and a new facility, looking at student safety, curriculum, instruction, so there are many components of our budget that are geared towards that merger.
Additionally, knowing that we're going to have lots of new technology, we're going to need to provide consistent and continuous professional development to support the teachers and staff in regards to not only for the daily operations of the school, but also for the integration of technology. We have formalized a technology plan, moving forward with the technology subcommittee of the building committee, and we're moving forward with that plan, which is quite exciting. I already spoke about a math interventionist. The role of that person will be to provide tiered instruction or a tiered, extend our tiered intervention approach. And I would also like to share that I think it's not most important, it's extremely important that we also move forward with unpacking the new science standards, working with our STEM coordinator, and identifying needed resources, et cetera, that we will need to be thinking about in order to be able to achieve the new Common Core standards for science.
And just today, this is a big component of what kindergarten will be focusing on next year. We have a new state mandate. It's called the Kindergarten Entry Assessment in Massachusetts, and today a team of teachers and myself were in Worcester learning about this new assessment, which is formative, and it is no less than 38 items that we need to show and document through observation growth in children who are in kindergarten. Several times throughout the year, there's a lot of, there's a whole component to it with curriculum there and all sorts of things. So this is something brand new that we're taking on for next year.
And how much funding did come with this new assessment?
There is some funding that comes with it. For the next 2 years, the state is paying the per student cost of $10 per child, but in the 16-17 school year, that goes away.
$10 per child?
There's also some professional development that goes with it, and we will need to train our staff this spring in preparation for launching this in the fall. And it's not a typical paper and pen assessment. It's looking at students in terms of where they're coming in. It comes out of the Race to Top birth through age 5 initiative, not the one that's weaning out now, not the K-12 Race to Top, but it's the birth through age 5, and that students are achieving at what they call widely expected kindergarten standards. So it's a lot because it's 38 elements. We're able to choose just a little bit for next year, but eventually this is something brand new that we will have to implement. So we had a little taste of it today, and we will have some mandatory training as the spring goes out. But that is going to be a huge crux of what not only Newburyport, but all districts who are considered to be a part of cohort 3 by the state are going to enter into. So I'll definitely keep you posted.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I have.
You didn't think you were going to get away that easily, did you? Mr. Cole?
Yeah, thank you. I want to start with the, I guess, the pre-K program. FY15 shows the cost of approximately $404,000 in projected revenue 227. Can you explain how that gap is reconciled so it's more sustainable?
Well, the preschool program is never a self-sufficient program. Preschool program, all integrated programs, we are required to provide a continuum of services for students who are coming out of early intervention, aging out of early intervention with special needs and starting into the public school at age 3. The way that Newburyport does it, which is the way almost every other school in the state does it, is to provide an integrated program, and that a third of our students in that program are students that we are working with that may have special needs and receive therapies or integrated therapies, related services. And 2/3 of the students in the program are what we might consider typical or role model students. This is a common way of running a program as for an integrated preschool instead of having all of the students in the district who require special needs at ages 3, 4, and 5 before they enter kindergarten coming to your school just by appointment only. That would be much less cost effective. So we have raised our tuition. We have actually, since my time here, added a full day program and an extended day program and offer many complement of services. But a preschool program in any city is never self-sufficient by the tuition alone. There are some special education grants that come into it, specifically one grant called the 262 grant, but by no means would there be no cost to the LEA.
I guess that's what I'm looking for. If you could identify numbers for those various grants.
I cannot identify numbers to those various grants because they fluctuate from year to year. That's something that I
What
would
was
have
last
to.
year's? What were the grants last year then, with this current FY14 that made up some of this gap?
I'd have to elicit Barbara's response to that. I know one of them is considered the 262 grant.
Yeah, the 262 came in last year about 10,000. This year it's about $11,000. And that provides the places and staff and some program enhancement. And then there's another little grant that every year comes out. It's only about $3,000. And it's whenever sure it's going to come out every year. We've had that for the last few years.
I guess my point is, Mr. Cole, I don't consider it a gap. I consider the tuition to help offset the cost of the program to the LEA.
No, I understand how you consider it. I just know that we spent a lot of time prior to this meeting talking about sustainability, looking at budgets, and I guess I want people to be frank, is that this is going to be, I would say, sustaining these programs is going to be just as much as a challenge as sustaining technology, unless we find different ways to gain revenue. Have we, let's just move to kindergarten for a second, because there's another significant difference between the cost, which is roughly $624,000, and the projected revenue for FY15 of $295,000, a $329,000 difference. Is it the same rationale here as well?
Yeah, I don't think that the kindergarten program has changed. Based upon my research going back, we've brought in about $300,000 every year for the past several years, well before my time here. I remember Deirdre Farrell telling me it's about $300,000 per year that we bring in for kindergarten tuition. We do have the full day kindergarten grant, which, because we accept that, comes with also many mandates. That brings in, if I'm not mistaken, I'll ask Angela, about $65,000 this year, and that's it. We also have a half-day kindergarten program, which is the same as grades 1 through 12, that is not tuition-based, and that the LEA provides for through our budget, just as we would educate any other child in the city of Newburyport. The full-day kindergarten program is a tuition-based program, of which we voted on the tuition for that, if I'm not mistaken, back in January.
Okay, well, thank you for explaining that. My next question is probably for Ms. Davis regarding what types of things students and families can look forward to in Title I for next year, because it seems like there's being more dollars that are proposed in the FY15 budget.
We are right now planning on moving forward as we currently have. We have Title I in kindergarten at the Brown, and also in grades 1, 2, and 3. We currently have reading recovery in first grade. We have LLI intervention for first grade and second grade, and we also have RAVO, which is another program that we are utilizing in 3rd grade. Specifically next year, I can't speak to the specifics in terms of whether or not we will be making any changes to that to the Title I programming or not. But that's what we currently have in place right now.
So can you maybe just explain the increase in the funding between FY14 and FY15?
Where are you, Steve? You're in the Bresnahan budget.
On the Francis T. Bresnahan Elementary School.
Literacy.
Summary by program budget, literacy, Title I.
And so you're looking at the revised budget to the FY15 from 179 to 305?
Correct.
I think part of that is because we're bringing 2 schools together.
Okay.
So we have a full-time salary, a 1.0 from the Brown, coming to Bresnahan. But other than that, I don't work on the salary component of it, so I can't speak to that.
So it's just the same amount of students being served?
There will approximately, it varies from year to year.
All right, thank you. That's all I have.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Mr. DeCanter?
Principal Davis, can you just describe some of the highlights of the technology plan that you alluded to?
Well, we have submitted a proposal for new technology at the Bresnahan School, which includes multi-platform devices, so that we will have laptops, we will have tablets, we will have iPads, we will have carts that will be able to be brought into classrooms. We will have a technology lab with desktops. The library will be housed with technology as well. From there, we need to establish exactly what our professional development plan will look like to support our teachers and staff so that they will be able to kick off the year with the use of technology, but also to enhance the technology integration from where we currently are to be able to go into the new school.
There's also some software that we have added because we now will have much more technology at our disposal. So we have programs such as Brain Pop Junior, the IXL license, which will be an increase because it will include preschool and kindergarten next year. The Lexia license, which will be expanded to kindergarten. We have programs like the Spelling City, headsets, hover cams, mouse splitters, a little bit of the equipment that may not be the big package that we're getting through equipment and FF&E.
Are all of the licenses, are they site-based or are they seat-based?
Some of them are seat-based and some of them are site-based depending upon the program, depending upon the way they do it. Some of them might say if your site is, this many students, under this will be the license rate. So usually the more students, the higher population, the license will go up. And then we have some others that aren't, that are really more like we only have about 25, I think, Lexia licenses right now that we buy and we're looking to expand.
It seemed that Lexia was a key element of one of the things you were talking about. Is 25 seats going to be sufficient?
No, we're increasing it next year. And Angela can speak to that.
We can help you with that.
We are increasing those seats considerably next year, and we've negotiated with Lexia to include the Mullen School in that licensing deal. We should be able to accommodate, I think it's about 200 students in the Bresnahan School at one time next year.
That's huge.
As well as
That's
amazing.
a huge.
That's why I was asking. Yeah, excellent. Thank you.
And I just wanted to add that I believe, if I'm correct, the ratio was 1.2 to student device. which I
That's
think
right,
is
for the new
huge.
school.
It's huge.
That's exactly right. We calculated that at our last meeting.
Mr. Lukens, did you still have a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering, so we're projecting revenue of $552,000 next year for pre-K and K tuitions. based on how registration is going right now, are we on track to get that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Preschool is currently full with a wait list in every program. We were looking to increase one of our half-day sections, bring up one of our, we used to, excuse me, last year before the cuts that we went through for the FY14 budget, I had 4 half-day sections of preschool. I had to reduce 1 half section due to budget constraints. I was looking to bring up that half section again this year, but I didn't have the enrollment, and given that we want to make sure we get the tuitions, we didn't go with that increase this year. So right now, we have a full day program that is full completely with about 18 kids on the wait list. We have an extended day program that has 22 kids on the wait list. We have 2 sections of 4-day morning that have 6 children on the wait list. And we have 1 section of 4-day PM that is full, but there are no children on the wait list. So preschool is at its maximum, with the exception we always leave room for children that will come to us at age 3 with special needs, and then we fit them into the program. At kindergarten right now, our half-day enrollment, which we don't get revenue for, is down. We actually only have 18 students currently enrolled. That has fluctuated during my time here from anywhere from 2 to 4 sections. I do expect that those numbers will go up greatly between now and August. And we are at 115 out of 126 slots for full-day kindergarten, although some of those slots are being held for retention, and some of those slots are being held for students that may come in with more intense special needs and need a full-day program. So I wouldn't max that all the way up to 126. So we're just about at capacity for full day, with maybe 1 or 2 more spots available if somebody was to walk in tomorrow. Typically, I do see between now and the start of school about 20 more registrations. So those numbers are by no means set in stone, but we're in a really good place with enrollment.
Did the projections anticipate full enrollment, or I guess I'm trying to figure out whether we're going to be shorter or whether we're actually
our projections for next year are a little bit lower than they have been in previous years. But again, that is to go based upon today on April 7th. It's probably on par with what we have now. We have about the same number in our full day program, but we have more students in our half day program this year than we have slated at this point for next year. So I would say it's on par. It's not as large as it was when I had 4 sections of half day kindergarten and 7 full day kindergarten sessions. We will have 7 full day next year, and right now I'm still holding for 2 sections of half day kindergarten because I do anticipate that number will grow far beyond what we would want in one class. 18 is pretty much at its limit right now, so we would be in jeopardy if we just said we were running 1 half day section for next year. So that is a reduction from this year. We had 3 half day sections, and next year I've budgeted 2.
Although grades 1, 2, and 3 do not have funding coming in from parents, I'm paying careful attention to registrations that have already come in for next year. The first grade, we already have 9 registered students, new students. We have 3 for 2nd grade and 2 for 3rd grade, excuse me. We're on target as to typically where we are. I think, we typically say 10 to 12 students in 1st grade. 1st grade's the critical year when parents tend to transition their children from one school to another. So 1st grade is typically higher than the other 2 grades. It's a little early for 9 students already, so I think we are going to see higher numbers coming in as we had projected. We didn't really have a fixed number, but I have built it in anyway. I always build in 10 to 12 students.
Mr. Midland?
Yeah, I guess before I make the assumption, I want to ask the superintendent, the list that we got of the reductions, additions, that is operative in this budget? Okay. I guess the question that I have is that knowing that the Bresnahan is going to see cuts in the SPED teacher, kindergarten, and PE, I just want to ask the question about any impact on class size.
Really, I mean, part of that is because we're combining two schools, so we took advantage where we could in terms of enrollment. And if we didn't have to create a class, we didn't, so.
So there's really no appreciable impact.
Part of that, I think, too, when you specifically regarding the special subject schedule, is that currently we are sharing staff between the two schools, and so without travel, the schedule frees up some time, but also working on a schedule that, you know, we have the same start and end times, is going to support a full FTE schedule of the staff that we have.
Great, thank you. Yeah, that was my question.
Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you. Next.
So I'll just start with some of the accomplishments at the Mullen for this year. We started a STEM class, hired a .4 STEM teacher. It's primarily based out of the computer lab this year due to the fact that our science labs are currently being used as classrooms due to the construction. So the goal moving into next year with this position is having it based out of the science lab with access to technology to be able to build in some more hands-on projects for students. We participated in the Hour of Code, which was a huge push for students to become familiar with coding in computer science, because if you read any of the information out there regarding computer science in American schools, the data shows that we are lacking when compared to other countries. The teachers all participated in it. It went really well. Students were positive, and many of the teachers continued to carry it on throughout the school year, some of them even starting after school club, doing some computer science work with students. We implemented a co-teaching special education model this year. The feedback from that has been positive. I am currently collecting data on the student progress. Those classrooms have a general ed classroom teacher, a special educator that is attached to the classroom that spends the majority of the time in that room. They do pull out services as required by student IEPs, and there's also an instructional assistant in those classrooms. So the ratio for students in that room is pretty significant, and the data I've collected so far is very positive in terms of student progress. Something that we are continuing to work on, and the Mullen teachers have worked very hard at, is aligning the curriculum to the Common Core. It's a district push that we've all been doing. There's been a lot of work around that, and a lot of discussion that continues with Angela and our CAB leaders. Continue to implement the new teacher evaluation system. We're only in our second year of implementation, and we continue to work through that as a team with the teachers union, looking at dates and timing, and everybody's been really great and flexible with working with that. There's a definite learning curve to this evaluation system. We as well, with the Bresnahan, we implemented a spring after-school program for students based on teacher recommendations of students that needed extra help in both math and literacy. That is going well, and we're going to continue to work with that as we move forward into May. We also implemented a new standards-based progress reports that were aligned with what grades 1 through 3. We had done some work on this last year with the Bres and the Mullen together, and continued that work this year, and they are a work in progress. We continue to revise them. We get feedback from the teachers, and we'll be looking to get feedback from parents as well. And just something that's always nice to mention is, we owe a lot to the NEF, and they're such supporters of our school, and this is our second year of implementing a yoga and mindfulness program at the school, and I'm sure you all have heard that, we're having more students with a lot more social, emotional, behavioral issues, and yoga and mindfulness is a great way to teach students how to calm themselves, how to learn to focus, and maintain that throughout a really busy school day. Goals and objectives, things moving, oh wait, I can't believe I forgot this is like the biggest one to talk about. We've had, Beth and I, and all of our staff, and Susan, we've managed and completed 3 phases of our building renovation project. And that is definitely something to celebrate. So we will be looking for, we'll be having a after construction party sometime in the fall when it's all said and done. Moving forward, we're very excited about the increased technology opportunities that we will have due to the building renovation and the technology that is going to be available to both students and teachers. We will definitely need to build in a lot of professional development around it, but our students are digital natives, and we are moving them into the 21st century with the implementation of all this new technology. So that is super exciting for us. We will be adding a language-based learning center, so that's new to the budget. You'll see a 0.5 teacher. We currently have maybe 5 or 6 students right now that will be part of that program, and it's completely based on the definition of their disability, and they will receive most of their ELA instruction with this language-based teacher. We hope to have an increased range of STEM and learning activities, including continuing computer science, and we will definitely be part of the Hour of Code again next year. If that's something that happens, I'm sure it will. It was global, so we'd love to participate in that again. We are able, looking at our numbers of students on IEPs, we are able to continue to implement our special education co-teaching model, so we will be moving that forward next year as well. We are excited about rebuilding the art program. That's the other addition to Mullen, is a 0.3 art teacher, which would bring Mullen to 0.7 for an art teacher for next year. We will also begin some work on the new science standards as well. That's it.
Questions? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, as far as the middle school goes, in our list of accomplishments, I don't know if you have it in front of you, by the end of 8th grade, when I came in last year, despite a bleak budget, the MCAS scores out of 285 middle schools in Massachusetts, the NARC ranked 24th in English, 21st in math, and 44th in science and technology, which we're proud of. As a public school, we're also a human services provider, and we're responsible for ensuring that all kids can access and progress through the curriculum. And when I arrived last year, I had asked for an adjustment counselor, which we have this year, and I'm thankful that we are able to keep that. And it has made a world of difference, and it has completed our RTI team. Our entire guidance staff was trained in SOS, which is Signs of Suicide and Prevention, which we are planning on implementing a program in both middle and high school. Last year, the budget was frozen in October. So Lisa Furlong and myself, we knew that we had to look internally for efficiency, so we recreated the entire master's schedule that we planned for this year because we knew we would have a cut in IAs, which are I think we cut 5 of them last year. We also had huge class sizes in a lot of our Explore classes based on past cuts. So we recreated the master's schedule in progress last year. So when we did that, we were able to increase offerings in both foreign language and in tech ed. This year, tech ed came to us full-time. Tara in the Mullen mentioned a STEM teacher she hired. This year, we increased those offerings to 44 from 22. 3 course offerings last year were added to the Explore rotation at no cost. We added had Girls Inc. come in, and they have been working with 6th grade girls. We also added a literacy class to increase free reading based on the asset survey that Andy Egmont and her group does. We did that at grade 7, and in grade 8, our new school adjustment counselor, we created a transition course for 8th graders going into high school. We also added a math intervention class for students as identified by low MCAS scores, and in the fall we will create a semester of English as well. And we also created an intervention class for students who are in a failure loop, but not on an IEP, and we don't want them to head in that direction. We created the intervention classes, short 6 to 8 week interventions to help kids get out of that loop. We implemented a school-wide executive function plan. And we, like Tara said, we're excited to finish 3 phases of the renovation. We can't wait till the whole thing is over in September. Goals for this budget that you have in front of you. There are not a lot of, bless you, big things in this budget. A lot of it, because the budget has been frozen for so long, a lot of it is supplies and materials that a lot of teachers have gone without. So, I mean, you might see a big increase in art. It really just adds up to $7.11 per student. Art is something that Tara and I have talked about extensively in our schools. We are lacking a drama program in art. We have 22 classes of art per child, so we have increased that by 0.3. And with all the new technology coming in with a new technology plan, we put in for a tech integrator to help us move forward in the direction of teaching and learning when it comes to having all that new technology. And I think somebody asked the question, with computer labs, laptops, and all of that, it's a 3-to-1 ratio. So we're excited about that. With no further questions.
No, wait a minute, I haven't asked that yet. Anybody have a question? Brooks?
Yeah, I have just a couple of quick questions. I'm heartened to see that you are doing some things working with kids who have executive function issues. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Help me understand a little bit more about what
I can. Like I said, we tried to create a lot of different efficiencies. We were using some personnel in a lot of areas where instead of looking at the symptoms, we looked a little bit deeper at the problem. So we collected some data on it, and executive functioning issues are very common throughout middle schools anyway. So we had a lot of training last year as a whole staff, and we created a study skill set that carries throughout the school, a system of organization that carries throughout the school. We just had a training last week. Same landmark people that came in to help begin to teach our staff how to organize children with the new technology that we'll have in our hands. So it has actually helped a lot. We know that we're just in the infancy of this plan, but we're excited about it. I think it has helped tremendously with a lot of students, and it reduces anxiety, and it helps all over. So.
Yeah, no, I'm really glad to hear that. I think it's a need that really needs to be addressed in a more formal way. I'm glad to see that going on. I wanted to ask you, you talked about not having a drama program, but yet, the NOC has produced plays this year. Can you talk a little bit about how that happens? And I'm not asking you to talk about how we're managing to get a drama program without paying for one, as if that's a good thing. But can you talk a little bit about how that's happened?
Sure. Obviously, there's a strong passion for the arts in Newburyport, and we're proud to be part of that. The NOC productions in the past, they're all completely self-funded. You won't see that in the budget, which is something hopefully that we can make part of a longer-term plan. But this year, we knew we had to move quickly because they wanted to overtake our auditorium, which they did, I think, on March 10th. So what we did, we put a group of people together. I called Lisa Zaleski in the high school. She's the department chair. And she helped me organize a group of people. What did we want for a middle school experience? What would be appropriate for a production for this year? And what would be an appropriate, realistic cost that we could sustain over time? And we pulled that off. Ryan Nickerson was hired this year as our new music teacher, and Jamie Sokolowski is our chorus teacher. And they band together, and we all chose a play together. Lisa Zaleski helped guide them, being both new to the district. And I think we provided our kids with a really fun, collaborative experience that when they were finished, they were like, wow, look what we did. So it was really student-driven this year. The kids made the sets, the kids did the whole 9 yards. And I got a call one day from a parent. She said, you know, Beth, I heard the kids are lip syncing to all the music. And I was like, what? So I went and asked Brian. I was like, nope, it's a real deal. They're all doing their own parts, singing, and I thought it was a lot of fun. I thought it was a great experience.
I just have one more really quick question. Several years ago, there was the beginning of a state initiative to talk about extended day. And while we didn't kind of get in the queue for that, I know that some conversations had been begun, and that there was some talk of, even though we were out of the funding route, continuing those conversations. I just wonder if they had continued.
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. So the music program, I know, is currently before school. Your lessons? No, at your school. So not at your school. Is it part of that was actually the question I had. So can I ask one question of the Mullen?
Certainly.
Okay.
No, time's up. I'm sorry.
Is there talk of moving that into the school day?
No, due to the loss of instructional time that would happen.
Okay.
The lessons.
Okay.
And I've had that happen in other schools, actually the school that I came from. Kids were removed from class time for lessons, and what would happen is basically you could have 10 kids out of class taking their lesson, and then the teacher really loses time, because then the other kids, the teacher's more trying to just kind of keep the day going and do some makeup work, and then the kids that come back in have missed what was happening. It really doesn't work very well when they're taken out of instructional time.
So when they transition to the middle school, then it is part of the school.
It is. We have a much different schedule. There's a lot more movement. It's part of the Explore, so they get their time with the teacher that way.
I thought it was the same. But
We have a robust band program. It's still going strong, and you know, if it becomes part of a longer-term plan, it's hopefully that we can really maintain that and build it.
Do you find that most of them that will continue when maybe it's not been long enough to know?
It seems, I don't know what happens between 5th grade and high school, but they are extremely excited when they're in 5th grade, and we have 105 band students, and they do have band during the day. It's just the individual lessons are in the morning. I don't know what the numbers are once they move into the middle school.
That's what I was curious if it.
Yeah, it's in the 40s stuff at each grade level. And this year, so that we didn't lose ground with music, we have all 6th graders take chorus. So they at least get to experience it, and there's a lot of writing of music and things like that to keep them interested.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Between Ms. Rossi, actually, Ms. Rossi and Ms. Rashi, you both mentioned, or you had some comments about more social, emotional, behavioral issues, you know, coming in the doors, the building. You mentioned the success of your adjustment counselor in helping to address those. How do you, beyond the adjustment counselor, how do you maintain consistency and continuity in responding to students that present with those social and emotional issues that can offer significant risk that you've certainly acknowledged by training in the science of suicide and prevention?
We have a group of people in the building, administrators, our team chair for special education, our guidance team, and that also sometimes includes one of the Mullen guidance councils who often have a history of kids. But all our liaisons to families for different areas of our middle school population, and what we're trying to do is work more in the art of prevention. I think in years past, we've had a lot of kids get to a point where then it becomes more of a social emotional issue that puts them into a failure loop. So we put a lot of things in place this year. I think what has really made an impact with these kids before it gets out of control is an outreach to the family and help with mental health services that are in the community. In-school help and support for kids, a place to go and talk if need be, an intervention class if that's what's needed to help, whatever the situation is. All kids are different. But I really feel like the interventions that we've put in place are really producing results for us. Obviously, the work of a guidance counselor often is very quiet, but she is incredibly busy with the general ed population, where previous to that our staff had been really connected to IEPs only. So I think we have a lot more help, and I hope it's something that we can grow.
I want to add to that, and I think that the focus has been to be proactive rather than reactive.
Right.
And I think that by building those supports within the building, we've been able to do that.
Is there anyone in particular, though, that's responsible for consistency with the liaisons?
It's a team. We meet religiously every single week, and I think with lots of different points of view and outreach to different areas of the population in the middle school, what we're really trying to do is prevent any kids from slipping through a crack, and that's what we're working on.
And lastly, I just wanted to bring up foreign language again. The numbers in this budget don't reflect what we originally had intended for this FLIP program, or whatever it's called. And I realize that's because German was originally supposed to be included, and it's not, correct?
No, it was supposed to be a 0.5 and a 0.5. And, I know you often express frustration that this isn't a stronger program, and I couldn't agree with you more. But a 0.5 in a middle school would get maybe our students about 20 lessons a year, and there's just no strength to it. So it's my hope that not only do we keep foreign language here and begin to really expand it in the middle school, but also get it beneath us so that when they come in with that early acquisition of language, that we can really do something with it.
Have you ever looked at the program they have at Pentucket, where they do an exploratory semester in the 7th grade, and then they offer 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, effectively a 5-year program? And I know that I'm not expecting you to worry about the high school end of that, but have we looked at or, communicated with them about their model?
I haven't. I came from a fabulous model in Manchester, Essex. Like I said earlier, I'd walk into an 8th grade classroom and there was no English spoken ever. I mean, we can get there. It's just going to take time and money and patience. So, I mean, I think I understand what a good program is. I don't have the tools to do it right now. And I didn't ever dream that we'd have all this in a budget, but I also don't want to have you think that, oh, now all of a sudden we have all this excess money. We don't. It's going to take us time to really strengthen the programs that we have.
Any, besides hiring another fractional FTE, is there anything you can do about the load for the teacher?
Which, foreign language?
Yeah. Because that seems, so we have a teachers union president in front of me, that seems unfair.
She teaches 3 grades, same subject, just like all our Explore teachers. Some of our other Explore teachers teach 4 through 8.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
week or two ago, we were looking at cutting entire programs at the high school, many FTEs. There were a lot of sleepless nights with all of my colleagues about what direction we were going, and so I'm very pleased to sit before you and not have to have those direct conversations with my staff about basically dismantling programs and laying off X numbers of people in my building. But it's been said before, and people in the audience, this is a survival budget. It's very hard to improve and to grow when at the high school level we're adding a 0.2 FTE in social studies. But that's the reality of where we are right now this year. When we started our NEASC process 3 years ago, I had a chart up on my whiteboard, and I said I wouldn't erase it until after NEASC left, because it asked for 3 FTEs at the high school level. I haven't erased it yet, even though NEASC is left. I need help. I need additional staff. I'm going to have to make some pretty difficult decisions over the next several weeks, because I'm going to be reallocating some resources at the high school to fill in some needed areas where my core courses are going to be, in my estimation, too high. And I have to address the science lab numbers going over 24. So I've got some thinking to do. I've got some very, very preliminary numbers today in our course selection process from our students, but that doesn't include the 30 students from the charter school, the Immaculate Conception, and the school down on Main Street. And that's about 30 students that have yet to be inputted into our system, because we do those manually. So we're in the process of putting our schedule together, but I'm going to have to reallocate some resources at the high school in the coming year to make things work properly. I don't know where that's going to be at this time. 4 years ago, we had an administrator whose part of their job description was to handle their schedule. That's now been built out to other administrators who have other responsibilities. We had a person in technology 4 years ago whose main job was to create the high school schedule. That person no longer exists, so that position doesn't no longer exist. So that's been doled out to another person's part of their job responsibility. So we're skeletal, to say the least. I think we still have a very good school. I think we do some great things. But we're at a point where, 4 years ago, we were under 700 students. Next year, we'll be near 800. And I've grown these 7.2 cuts that were here before I came on board 7 years ago. We've gained 2 back. And that's not enough. So I'm cautiously optimistic as we move forward to the school year, knowing that I've got some difficult decisions to make in the very near future. And my colleagues know that I'm very passionate, sometimes over-passionate, about looking at cuts that don't affect direct instruction in the classroom. And that's what I've been about since I've been a teacher and a coach, and went over to the dark side to become an administrator. And that's not going to change. That's how I feel. And I'm very, very passionate that the last thing that we cut is something that has a direct effect upon the classroom. And it makes your job difficult when that happens.
Mike, the difficulty, because the budget has been changed, is that we have things that were covered in system-wide or administration that are now put in your budget. So it looks like you've got a 58% increase in your budget, which is not at all accurate at all in terms of where you are. So with 75 to 100 additional freshman class coming in, I think.
We've had an increase over the last 4 years of 75 to 100 students.
Okay, so it's not just freshman class?
Correct.
Okay, sorry. What I think would be helpful to the school committee, if you could get us information on where is the biggest problems in terms of the courses, the caseload. Where is it that you're going to have the most difficulty covering? Where are your concerns? Is it science labs, number of students? And we just need to get broken down a little bit.
I can tell you that right now.
Okay.
We projected having between 180 and 185 freshmen, maybe 190 last year. We had a class of 216 that I have to move through the next 3 years of curriculum. So next year, that's going to balloon out some of my chemistry sections in science. It's going to balloon out my grade 10 English sections, my grade 10 social studies sections, my world language 10th grade sections. Those are the areas that I have concerns about. So it's transitioning, and you know, this freshman class coming in, you know, I heard from Beth tonight that 5 of her freshmen are going to Whittier, which, you know, I'm
about 20 students later.
You know, I'm secretly going, you know, that could be helpful to us. But, you know, I've got, you know, we had 52 families sign up children to attend Newburyport High School last summer. And if we have 52 again this summer, we will be over 800 students. And I don't think anyone can project that at this point. We usually get them coming in, trickling in throughout the summer, signing up.
What's the capacity of this building like?
Well, if you go way back, they had, you know, 1,400 kids in here at one point. Now I'd say, you know, I'm going to have trouble, let me just put it this way, I'm going to have trouble fitting 800 kids in this auditorium.
Right, there's less than 800 in this.
Yeah.
No, I was just asking when the high school was renovated, I thought there was a number given. I know it was less than 800.
It could be, I'm not.
780, something like that. Right, Bruce? That's about right?
I think that's about right.
So I've got to look at the key areas. Once we have more solid numbers with our scheduling, I'll be able to look at numbers of sections and be able to say, okay, I need X over here, Y over here, and then I've got to decide how do I get that.
So how soon will you have that done?
Probably May, first week of May.
That's after we pass the budget.
One of the other things that I think that needs to happen is that we need to put a system into place where we have an opportunity to perhaps survey the IC and charter kids and get solid numbers earlier to find out who is planning to come to Newburyport High School. As I think that would definitely help us in terms of being able to be more planned around this.
Susan and I have talked about moving the scheduling process to earlier in the year. And the issue with that is that teachers are always asking for more time so they can make the proper recommendation of the student to the proper level, you know, in the 9th grade classes at high school. So that's always been you know, that's been a yin and a yang type of thing, because you might get something better on one end, but you may not get the accuracy as far as the proper placement of students into the levels of classes. Because the teacher would have less time to make those assessments.
So, Mike, if you look at the areas, the 4 areas that you've identified, are you talking, you know, have you kind of looked at, is it a 0.3, is it a 0.5, is it a, have you been able to break it down to that level of detail?
You know, I would love to see 1.5, which is in my school improvement plan, but, you know, if I can get 0.6 or 0.8, I think I can make it work. Now, you know, I might be able to do that by shifting and reallocating within the high school. That's a reality that I may have to live with. and that may, you know,
So that would mean you'd have people teaching outside their area of expertise?
no, that would not. That would have everybody, you know, I have a .8 science teacher. I have a .6 world language teacher. I have a .8 world history teacher. I have a .9 English teacher. So I could add FTEs to their current situation by basically doing shell game, just moving things around differently. But that's going to affect some people in the building if I go that route, because I'm going to be taking something from one area and putting it into another.
It's really serious. This isn't good. Is there, I'm just going to ask this question, is there any chance, because there was a suggestion the superintendent had, that could alleviate the pressure of this by making some changes in the teacher's contract at the high school? Is there any chance we can do that? Is there any chance we can do that? It takes a vote of the entire teacher.
The reopener would have to be read, and
Would happen in time for the budget anyway.
It's a time crunch this year. I mean, that's what we're looking at.
Mike?
So I think the concerns that you've raised to me are more serious than other concerns that have been raised, and they reflect the report out that you gave on the school council a month or two back. And they're valid given the increase in enrollment over the last few years. So I guess my question is, you know, should this have been addressed in the original, in the budget request? And then secondly, should those concerns be prioritized higher than some of the other elements of the budget in terms of staff increases that we have on the table right now? So I want to make sure that we address this within, you know, this to me is something that we need to talk about before we vote on the budget at the end of this month.
We had very fluid conversations, and you know, Susan can jump in, or Angela, whenever they want. You know, I have floated a plan out that I haven't talked to any of my staff with, and I'm not going to, you know, make that public without speaking to the parties first. But you know, I do have a plan in mind to move forward to at least cover the gaps that I've just spoken about for next year. You know, if I don't get the FTEs, I think I can make it work for another year, but I would be coming in front of you in my 8th year, 7 of which we looked at budget deficits, asking for additional staff. If we really want to move things forward, and we're talking about STEM initiatives, and we're talking about all these things, it comes with a cost, and it comes with additional teachers. I can't ask my teachers to do any more than what they're doing. They're doing a lot now, and they're doing it very, very well. And they work hard every day, and, you know, but there comes a point where, you know, if people want all these great things, and so do I, and so does my staff, and so does my colleagues, there's just so much money to go around, and again, you know, we had to prioritize, and you know, we all had to give up a lot of things to get to the point where we are today. You know, we gave up supplies and materials to get to the bottom line number, and you know, I can make what I want to do work. It's just that, you know, I'm sitting in front of you again saying that, you know, we've been coming forward for at least 4 years asking for additional staffing, probably in all of our schools. And you know, it's not going away. It's part of, as someone said before, the long-term planning I think is critical to get us to where we want to be 1, 2, 3, 4 years out. And I am encouraged by the people who showed up earlier in the evening that there is an impetus to move forward and look at things not just year to year, but long term. And with that in mind, I've asked all my department heads to provide me 3 years out. Give me a list of haves, wants, and needs, so that I can better look at over the next 3 years what I might be bringing forward in budgets after this one. But the budget that's in front of you, and Dr. Orlando brought it up before, it's not jiving with my school improvement plan, and we have been at the school council level calling it a school survival plan. And again, this is much better than where we were a week ago on Monday night, when I was looking at taking entire programs out of the high school curriculum. And that's not going to happen. And I'm going to have to reallocate some resources to keep my core areas doable and to allow teachers to do the type of teaching and assessing and not have them have any more students on their caseload than they currently have. So I've got some adjusting to do with my leadership team, working with my, with Mike Testa, associate principal. We've got to look at things very, very carefully, but I will be reallocating resources at the high school.
Will you come back in 2 weeks and talk to us, please? Sure. I just think we need to know where he is in 2 weeks after this adjustment, so we can have this conversation before we pass the budget. Thank you. Mr. Lennon? Oh, I'm sorry, Audrey. I keep forgetting her. Sorry.
I defer.
She's very far away.
I have 2 questions, actually. Now they don't seem all that important, but I'm going to ask them anyway. So if you have what you have, what is your class size? What would it'll increase class size, I'm assuming?
If you make this, if I move forward with the plan that I kind of outlined in my head, it'll cut class size down in some of the core areas in the school.
And guidance counselors, how many guidance counselors are there?
I have 4.
So basically each one has a grade level?
No, they're divided up alphabetically by grade, and they all have different grade levels.
But some have over 200 kids, right?
I don't think any of the high school guidance counselors are over 200. They're in the 190 range, 180.
So with your incoming freshman class, you'll just spread them out?
Yes. We were, for a couple of years, we were having all the freshmen report to one counselor and then disseminating them out over their sophomore, junior, and senior years, and we felt that wasn't the best decision that we made as a group, and so we've gone back to the more traditional model, so that we hope that a student will have the same counselor over a 4 year span of time.
So, I guess I'm a little concerned as to those kids that slip through the cracks again with like guidance. My understanding there's a little, they have to really take initiative to make a connection, and my understanding was it was kind of caseloads. But are we doing all we can for like college prep and doing some of the traditional things that I remember guidance counselors did, or have we moved in a new direction? And
I think our guidance counselors do a tremendous job as far as the college process. They have open parent nights. The use of Naviance, which is an online tool, has greatly helped and streamlined the process. Trish Blackstock, who is the department head in guidance, she's got a Twitter account that she stays in contact with 12th grade parents and students, and communicates to them via Naviance. I'm hoping that we can tap into Naviance for more tools that they offer to assist families and students. And the other thing, in response to the connection piece, our counselors, all of our guidance counselors work hand in hand with the wellness department and they did a freshman experience program over the last 2 years with the freshmen in the wellness classes, first semester. All freshmen take wellness in the first semester of their freshman year. And we go over study habits and organization and who do you, just what's the high school about? If you have this type of issue, who do you go to? Who are the go-to people? They bring in different people from the school to talk to the students. So they're making more of a connection at that freshman year. And so a student gets to see all 4 counselors once in every 7-day cycle of their first semester.
One more question, please. So, your transition from the middle school to the high school, you wrote about that improvement, but is it, on your end, is it being done through your guidance department? Or
I'm not quite sure what you're asking.
The what department?
So the all departments talk to each other,
Oh, okay.
including guidance.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I guess I have a few questions. I don't want to put any words in Mr. Lucan's mouth, but I got the sense he was saying that if you don't ask, you don't have any chance of getting anything.
Yes, that's what
Yeah. Good, sorry. I just wanted to sort of put that out there. And I understand, you know, I've watched for years the pendulum swing back and forth and back and forth, and I was really, really encouraged when I heard the process by which you guys made decisions about where staff are going, where the additions are. But it is, you know, it's a significant problem. It's been a long time since we've seen staff added in the program, and you know, I would encourage you to think creatively and be invited to come back. I ask. You know, I think that you got to ask if you're going to have any chance of getting it. So I would encourage you to do that. In looking at what's being added at the high school, it's a .2 social studies teacher. Can you tell me what does that do for your social studies program? What does that mean?
That will allow us to add another section of grade 10 social studies.
So it's core.
Yes, a core area, not an elective, so that we can take those 216 kids that are moving from the 9th grade social studies curriculum going into the 10th grade. I can add another section of grade 10 social studies. That will help alleviate the caseloads for all of the other grade 10 social studies teachers next year. That person also happens to be, right now, currently, my virtual high school teacher. So by, unfortunately, taking virtual high school off the high school rules, that teacher then rolls back into the classroom at the same FTE they are at now. Because virtual high school requires us to pay 350, is it? 300 per student? Nancy, if memory serves me. Yeah. And then we also have to pay a .2 of an FTE for that teacher to teach a virtual high school course. And that's where the biggest cost of having a virtual high school program is. So I'm basically getting a .2 teacher who's teaching virtual high school this year, teaching a subject within the high school to alleviate caseloads for grade 10 social studies next year.
And what does that mean in terms of the use of the virtual high school program in terms of electives?
That means that the 27 students who have signed up for virtual high school next year will have to choose a different elective, something within the building.
And that potentially could be 27 different electives that you don't teach that they could choose.
Correct.
That's correct.
You know, we went through this last year. It makes no sense to me as a cut. When your issue is getting electives to kids, and this is a tremendously cost-effective way to do it. I understand, and that's why I'm saying, you know, ask, because help me understand.
We also have to remember, we lost 7.2 teachers in 2006, 2007. I've been able to add 2 plus a adjustment counselor last year in budgets that were cut. So it's not like, you know, I've been the forgotten child of Newburyport School District. But I'm at a critical mass with the numbers of students. This is going to be the largest population of students will be next year of all of the 7 years that I've been, you know, involved in high school. And, you know, again, if we're going to move forward, and again, I am thrilled beyond belief, as my colleagues are, that we're sitting here not talking about decimating entire programs within any of our buildings, or letting X number of teachers go again. So, you know, I can withstand things for a year and make it work, but I'm going to come before you again next year and say, that board in my, you know, the ink on the board in my office is, you know, it's fading away because it's been there now going on 5 years. And at some point, these things have to be addressed if we're going to add the type of courses that we talked about, the, you know, interdisciplinary courses, the engineering courses, the STEM courses. You know, I don't have the staff to take from one area and say, you're going to do this now, because then I'm blowing up the class sizes for the other teachers in those areas. And so, you know, again, we can play the shell game only so long before we have to make, you know, difficult decisions like saying, you know, I can do without virtual high school next year at Newburyport High School. I'm not happy to say that, but I would rather put the resources to keeping class size more manageable for all of my sophomores next year in social studies classes. So I've got to look at the balance of what works and what doesn't.
Mike, I understand that. I guess what I'm saying is that but I don't think it has to be one or the other. I don't think it's that clear. I think that you know, this was a program that we went to outside funding to get. You know, how many FTEs would you need to be able to teach 27 electives?
At least 5.4.
Yeah, again, you know, I just, that's the, you know, my frustration is that it isn't even so much for the program, it's just that being forced to make these kinds of decisions, you know, I guess I'm just tired of it. You know, you must be incredibly tired. It just doesn't, I can't, no matter how I try to put it through my head, I can't make it a cost-effective decision.
You know, I think with Susan here and to talk about a long-term, you know, taking the pulse of the schools and where we want to go and developing a long-term vision and a multi-year look at the budget, I think will go a long way in helping us define what's needed, not just year to year, but, you know, over the next several years. And that to me is crucial, because we've been talking year to year for the last 5 years. And that's no one's fault, that's just from the reality. But I'm encouraged by what I've heard in the audience tonight, that people are ready to move in a different direction. And I think I can speak for all my colleagues, is that we're all ready to make that move. We would much rather be sitting here talking about 2 years from now, this is what we're going to be, as opposed to the reality is, you know, we're just trying to get through next year. And again, this is light years from where we all thought we were going to be a week ago, and I appreciate all of the time, energy, and effort everyone's done, because, again, I can make this work. It's not going to be the best, but it's not going to be devastating. And it was looking like devastation a week ago. And we dodged a big bullet, and I look forward to better times.
Mayor, just one additional question. I know that we have talked about the possibility of introducing a senior project at some point. And I was just curious if by introducing a multi-credit comprehensive senior project for students, does that have any impact in shifting your needs for FTEs?
It depends on the type of, it depends on what you do. If you do like a school in the community that lets the seniors go 2 months early and they're off doing internships in a project like that, it could have somewhat of an impact. But it's also additional work for staff members who have to take this on as part of the responsibility. And, you know, when I've got, you know, core area teachers that have the caseloads they have, I think it's very difficult for me to go and say, oh, by the way, now I want you to do a senior project on top of everything else you do, and or I want to introduce an advisory which is going to have you do additional work beyond what you're doing in the classroom. And right now, we're not staffed properly to do either one of those two things, and we just don't have the manpower at the leadership level at the high school with 2 administrators as opposed to 3 to adequately plan these things out, because we're too busy keeping, you know, we're doing 3 people's work with 2 people. And that's been that way now going on 4 years.
You have an opportunity to look at some of the other, that I know I was just reading that Marblehead is just their seniors are just starting their presentations of their senior projects. And have we looked at other schools, how they've been able to manage this or work this in, and is it something that we could possibly put on the table with this team when we get together to look towards the future?
Certainly could, absolutely. I've got seeds planted for, a senior project with the English department that, they've done part and parcel of different parts of that work. But we just don't have the manpower to pull it all together.
Thank you.
Mr. Cole. Thank you. Let's see, a couple of things. One, a logistic, and I don't think this has been brought up in the course, but who's responsible for our resource officer here now? Is that a school budget expense, or is that afforded to us by the police department?
Youth Services Grant.
Youth Services Grant, okay. Thank you. Thank you. And that grant will be in place for next year?
We hope so.
Okay. All right. Second question, I want to reiterate all the things that Mr. Menon said about the importance of the VHS sustaining that. It's a very useful course, a very useful option for students. I can report personally that I had a daughter take a VHS course in art history this past first semester, and it was transformational for her. She really enjoyed it. And she was recognized here at NHS in October as Student of the Month for her efforts in that class, and the recognition she got from her teacher has really propelled her in looking toward college next year and being accepted into a dual degree program with art and liberal arts. So I highly recommend we try to keep that. The other thing that happened last year that was very disappointing is that last year as a committee we deliberated to provide an updated textbook for civics and government, because the current civics and government text is 1995, and I just find that inexcusable. And if there's some way, whether it be within this budget process or outside of this budget process,
that money is included in this budget.
It is?
Yes.
For the same amount of text? Was that?
Yes.
I saw it, okay. Well, I hope it goes through. I also wanted to ask about what the cost has been relative to the mandates related to concussions. Has there been any added unfunded mandate or cost?
Well, the impact software that we utilize, I think there's a cost related to that, Steve. But it's been mostly manpower.
It's $500 a year.
Yeah. So our trainer, our nurse, athletic director are really, bear the brunt of the concussion training and the aftermath. I think we're right now at the high school in the mid-20s as far as concussions this year, both in school and outside of school.
I was going to ask if, how many trainers we did have, because I think it's really important, if at all possible, to have a trainer present at any home contact sport, because I think it's minimally unfair and not a good position to have coaches address the injuries.
Yep. We try to have the trainer at, you know, especially hockey, lacrosse, and football. However, you know, if you look at the statistics, cheerleading is the #1 sport for injuries at the high school level. So it can happen anywhere.
Right.
But we do try to allocate that resource to the contact sports whenever possible.
Yeah. I just, you know, as a school committee member, I would be in favor if somehow we were able to add and have more trainers available, because, you know, student athlete safety and the liability that goes with that, I think, is very important. And I guess the last thing, and this is kind of going to be a bit of a summary in hearing what you've said. A few years ago, you were very responsive. I had sent you a write-up about Parents' Night for the 8th grade parents coming in here. And the following year, you did a really nice job in providing a number of things that I suggested. And it's all about, you know, showcasing this, you know, fine high school. But I see some, I guess, conflicts coming in here. I see this high school becoming overcrowded, and I see us not being able to provide some of the electives, some of the courses that we want, and I'm concerned that we're going to lose some students, but I'm also concerned about whether we can fit enough students, you know, if we're going to be overcrowded. So I guess in moving forward, I guess the Parents' Night thing is really symbolic for me, and I don't know if you've reflected on that at all as you stand up here and speak to, you know, prospective 8th grade parents, you know, what the message that you want to give to people is, and how the struggle with getting what you need here at the high school affects that.
You know, again, I see you're telling me, you know, I need additional FTE, but I can also tell you that we offer a pretty good program for a high school our size. I have no regrets as to the number of classes that we offer for a school of right now 750 or even 800 students. I think we offer a wide range of electives. We have good core courses. We have good teachers in the building. We ask parents, maybe we sell it too well, to have their students get involved in the culture of the school. You know, 60% of my students play an athletic sport. We have a very strong drama program. You know, we're trying to rebuild our music program. So, you know, I'd love to see a third language at the high school. I would love to see, you know, advisory senior project. I think if we get the proper manpower in and give people time to work on getting those done, you would see that happen. But, you know, we've kind of been treading water. You know, the NEAS report will be coming out in the next couple weeks, and you know, I think all in all we fared very well in the report. But you know, they're making some recommendations that are not surprises to the school as we reflected on ourselves over the last 3 years. You know, I think this is a very, very good high school. I would send my child here in a heartbeat, and I would do that next year and the year after, because I think we have a dedicated staff and we have a good core curriculum. But again, if we want to get to that next level, certain things have to fall into place, and that's kind of where we've kind of hit a wall, so to say, as far as, you know, the proper staffing that's needed to address some of those needs. And again, you know, talking to Susan, looking at the whole process of how we do things here, looking at my scheduling process, possibly tweaking it and making some moves here might allow me to provide you with some more hard data as opposed to preliminary numbers of kids signing up for classes. So I'm not, I'm to address Dr. O's statements before, he's correct. In my school improvement plan, it's asking for 1.5 teachers next year. I know I'm not going to get that, but I can make it work by reallocating resources within the building, which is what I'm going to attempt to do over the next several weeks.
I wasn't implying there's anything wrong with high school. I just feel that when one of the things you're dealing with is it getting overcrowded, and like you say, am I being too good of a salesperson?
It's one of the reasons, when we bantered about school choices as a, leadership team, I said, well, wait a minute, taking 1 or 2 exchange students in your senior year is a lot different than taking 5 or 10 or 15 freshmen that have to, go through 4 years of high school. And at this point, I just don't see us having that luxury of that space. Whereas 4 years ago, when we were under 700, I think we're 685, 690, it made sense. It doesn't make sense right now.
Thank you.
Anything further? Thank you. Before we move on to our next agenda item, I just want to say on behalf of the school committee, we realize how long and hard and painstaking this budget was. But I also believe that we've crossed a road here. I'm seeing a lot of teamwork here. I'm seeing a lot of investment from, your leadership, our leadership team, and wherever we move in the future, I think the school committee will be looking to the leadership team to give us the recommendations as to what we need to do and where we need to go. So I just want to thank you for all your time and effort over the past months, and thanks for hanging in there. So, superintendent's report.
I will be brief because it's late. I did attend the National Honor Society induction, and we had 42 students that were inducted into the National Honor Society, and it was a lovely ceremony. And Angela, you may want to add to this, but Mark Littlefield has been recognized in a statistics book that was recently published.
Cool. Yeah, how?
He's part of the team for, do you want to help me out, Mike?
There was a team of mathematicians that looked at the accuracy of all the problems and everything that was in the book. And when you look at it, it's, college professor, it's doctor, of course, Mark Littlefield.
And Mark.
So, really nice kudos to his efforts.
Right there in the acknowledgement.
That's great.
Good text.
The faculty at Newburyport High School held their own opening day lunch with hot dogs and traditional ball game food. It was a nice little climate culture activity. I wanted to share with you that Dawn Skane sent me some information. Now that we're kind of through the first legs of Park, that from a statistical, from his perspective, I want to say, that he thought things went as well as they could have gone in terms of the technology piece. So I think it's important that I share that with you, because none of us had a clue as to how it was going to be and whether or not you agree with it, whether or not it had some scheduling issues. The technology part, for the most part, worked pretty well. Angela?
And if I could just add to that, I really want to thank the teachers who were involved in administering the test and the principals who were involved in scheduling and getting all the logistics together, because that was really a nice team effort all the way along between our technology team, our administrative team, and the teachers who were the administrators in really helping the students feel comfortable and getting them through this real test. So that was all.
And I want to add that this is a group that doesn't need another thing out of their plate right
Right.
now, particularly with building projects, so the fact that they got through it is a testament to their commitment. Last week, we had 10 banking internship students participated in the Massachusetts School Bank Association Conference. And one of Newburyport's banking internship teams finished in the top 6 in the marketing competition. And we had 2 students who placed second in the product design category. They did a great job in terms of representing Newburyport High School, so we are proud of them. And Mrs. Hill completed 10 years of running a very successful program with our 3rd graders. Teams of Tomorrow, which is a basketball skill drill program. They did very well at their show here at Newburyport, and then the show last weekend was at the TD Garden. We had about 60 3rd graders participating, and we sold about 450 tickets that all saw the Harlem Globetrotters.
I was there, they were amazing. Amazing.
And the folks at Bresnahan are feeling, and Brown are feeling pretty excited because they received their tiger boxes. Moving. Get a little bit more real. It started today. And then but the last thing I wanted to share with you is that we have what's called the BOX program. Don't ask me what the acronym stands for because I can't tell you that. But it's run by 2 parents, Kim Patrick and Jenna Schulson. And they have been running this program at the Bresnahan School. They are volunteer parents, and they received a grant, and they went to the Reebok facility for a day of training. They set up a wonderful opportunity for 40 students to get up and get into school early to exercise, as well as to learn nutrition facts. Parents are dedicated to the cause of helping our kids keep fit and instill lifetime lessons. They're here every Monday and Wednesday mornings by 7 a.m. And they get set up and they're ready for the students who arrive at 7:15. Students are active, laughing, engaged, and leave ready for their day of school at 8:15. Parents stay afterwards, put all of the equipment away, and make sure that teaching spaces is ready to go. And I just think that that's a wonderful commitment for 2 of our parents who are doing that for our kids. I'll share that with you. That's it.
Well, moving on to subcommittee reports, I'm going to begin with Joint Ed. We had an abbreviated meeting this evening because of the budget conversation with the mayor. And as you can imagine, we talked a lot about the budget. I just wanted to acknowledge that, is it something I'm saying? No, it's okay. It's a long night. I know. I just want you to know how much the counselors on the Joint Ed committee are committed to our schools. It's really a nice thing to be a part of. Finance did not meet, I know. Policy, I don't think.
2 weeks.
Yeah. So that's it for our subcommittee reports. There is no executive session. Could I hear a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. We all did.
Pick one, doesn't matter, pick somebody.
Choose anybody.
The mayor.
Mayor made the motion.
All right, I've missed the whole first quarter of the game. Is that all?
I think though, you're better off missing the first quarter than the last quarter.
I know that.